All right, I think we're live. So welcome everyone to another Matt Maran Motoring live stream here on the Matt Maran Motoring YouTube channel. Hope you're all having a great weekend here, and thanks so much for stopping by and hanging out here on a Sunday night. So like all the other usual live streams, we're going to go for about 2 hours or so. We'll give priority answering to anyone who does a super chat or a super thanks, as well as anyone who's a member there with the green usernames. They always get that priority answering. If you'd also like that, there's always join buttons here on the video page, on the channel page, and a link in the description. But anyway, so I see we have a bunch of people have already joined in, and this is also the 86th live stream here we've done since I've started naming them as just episodes. So we can focus on the GR86 tonight a little bit. But anyway, I see Brian, Goodstick, Kevin, Class Act, Danny, Grand, Anthony, Dave, and Cam, and many others here. Brian, Jordan, Jazz, Luke, Shane, Six Licks, B. Mitchell, Decepticon. Thanks so much for stopping by, everyone. And so, yeah, getting right in, I see Class X saying the Launcher N TCR edition, sorry, not enough. I just saw the thumbnail for the video. I actually have a busy weekend, so I didn't get a chance to check it out, but it looks like a giant wing on the back. Anyone else want to fill me in? You're more than welcome to. We can discuss, but I have not had the time to actually check that out myself, but I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts. And Danny, thanks for coming back as well. Hopefully we get you a membership here this week, but I'll try and keep an eye out for questions there as well. Let me see. Good Six says, this is another prediction I have with cars in the future either being fully autonomous or hardcore driver-focused cars. We could see brands partnering with each other. Absolutely. I think, yeah, some of the brands that don't have the either budget or the engineering expertise to make those types of cars absolutely could partner up, because I think you're right. If it kind of diverges into these two groups, absolutely, there's gonna be some companies that will either try and compete or just give up on that whole sector and go for the autonomous thing, and that's it. It'll be interesting. And Brian, thanks so much for gifting 5 memberships here right off the bat. We'll see. YouTube's doling them out here. See if we get lucky with Danny. And Linda just gifted 5 memberships as well. Let's keep our fingers crossed for Danny. Hope he gets a membership here. All right. Happy to see a lot of other people getting them. Luke gifted one as well. Thanks, Luke, for that as well. Thanks, everyone, for your generosity. But, man, the algorithm still is not happy with Danny here tonight, unfortunately. We'll see what happens, but like I said, I'll keep an eye out for Danny's questions. He can be an honorary member here, since we've all tried so hard to get him a membership here, so I will keep an eye out for his comments here tonight. But thanks so much, everyone, for your generosity and for trying. And that's awesome. You guys are awesome. But yeah, I'll definitely try and get to all of Danny's quotes here tonight in comments. But Igustic also says, and curated driving experiences with a subscription model. You can drive a Mercedes C63, but can switch to a BMW M3 at your choosing, literally like you're in Turismo or Forza. Yeah, I think that's really smart. And there's been a bunch of companies kind of dabbling with this kind of idea of selecting various sounds. We just saw Honda teasing this, with their future electric stuff. They had, I think I covered a few weeks ago in the weekly update, where they have a bunch of the historical Honda sounds you could select from in your future EV. I don't know if that'll make it to production, but I sure hope it does, because there's no downside there. People who hate it can completely ignore it and pretend it doesn't exist. People who enjoy it, it means you can have different fun sounds every day. And I think if you're going to monetize, do it the same way video games have done it for years, with fun DLC, not forcing you to pay to turn on heated seats and stuff. Like, have it fun. And I think that's absolutely the way forward. If they actually want to try and get some kind of subscription model going for anything in cars, I think that's the kind of stuff to do. And thank you so much. Also, I see Grand Admiral Thrawn also gifted a membership there. And I see happy again, see some new faces here that are getting the memberships, but sorry to hear about Danny. But yeah, I will definitely try and get to Danny's stuff here tonight as well. And thanks so much again, everyone, for the giftings there. Let me see. Cam says, aloha. Grant says, whenever I hear the term autonomous car, I think of Kit's evil twin. Yeah, there's a bunch of those, like even Christine, for those who remember the older horror movie that involved a car. It's definitely been something. I think this is part of why the public, some people are a little skeptical of that for very valid reasons, for sure. But I think, yeah, that kind of being a thing in movies in the past certainly doesn't help either. Let me see. Cara says, "Hi everyone, Matt. What are your thoughts on TCR?" Everyone's asking. I should have checked up on that, and I just didn't have a chance. He said, "I just saw a video from Hyundai and noticed that Class Act mentioned it. I think it looks really awesome for a track day car." Yeah, I'm curious now. And Danny says, "Hey, Matt, I saw a really rare spot in New Jersey this week. It was a clean, non-rusted out 1989 Mazda 929. It was a V6L luxury model, but still a really cool spot." Yeah. I couldn't tell you the last time I saw a 929. It's been a long time, probably at least a decade for me. That's impressive. So very cool spot. And let me see. Jordan says Rivian Volkswagen joint venture deal rises up to 5.8 billion. Volkswagen cars expected as early as 2027. Yeah, and I think since Scout is under Volkswagen, I think that is the stuff that I'm assuming they're alluding to for 2027. There could be some other stuff as well. I don't know if your comment means, if I didn't see if they said specifically Volkswagen branded cars by 2027. That wouldn't surprise me. I think also, this is potentially even beyond just cars. I think this is Volkswagen's fix for, we suck at software. Let's hire, buy someone essentially to do software for us. I think that is going to be the big gain, which is good in some ways because it means they finally figure out, how to do seamless and reliable software in cars and have everything communicate in a very reliable fashion. But if they follow Rivian's lead with, not having Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, if the whole Volkswagen group does it in addition to GM ditching it, then we could really see a new phase of most companies potentially being like, oh, well, now we have a few dominoes falling, almost like we saw with the NACS port last year, where it was like everyone was CCS, and then all of a sudden, little by little, the dominoes started falling, starting with GM, Ford, and others, and then everyone just followed along. That's the other thing that makes me a little nervous about that. Is okay, we've shown that Tesla can do it, that Rivian can do it, GM is doing it with lots of criticism, but they're doing it. If Volkswagen follows suit, then everyone else is going to say, oh boy, great, a cash grab. Let's, hurry up and cut Apple out of this and keep all the data for ourselves to monetize and utilize however we want. And, give them a new hope that, hey, maybe we actually can have everyone do only our software, because that was the dream, a decade or more ago. And, some people just dealt with it until CarPlay came along and decimated those dreams, and so I think these companies, they want the data. Everything these days is about the data, and I think that is part of that too. But I think it really is just, I'm happy that Volkswagen finally paid someone essentially to do the software for them, since that's been the biggest thing that's been delaying a bunch of these product rollouts. With Macan EV was delayed a bunch as a result of that. A bunch of these electric Volkswagen Group things, they just could not figure out the software. So if that's the main thing that Rivian does, that's great. I just hope we don't lose CarPlay and Android Auto. But Luke says, I'm super impressed with the new Passport and the Acura ADX. I'm pleasantly surprised with both as well. I thought they would phone it in a lot more on Passport, and they didn't. It actually finally has unique styling. Now we will see. They could kind of, screw themselves here if all of a sudden Pilot says, ta-da, next year it gets all the same stuff. I hope they actually do keep them distinctive. And I think what you most likely will see, I don't think Pilot can stick around with the small screen now that Passport has it. So I would expect Pilot to possibly, I don't know if 25s are already out. If not 25s, then I'm guessing, 26, like the Passport, you'll probably see that big screen, go into the Pilot as well. Hopefully the other unique bits, though, stay, again, exclusive to Passport, because Passport's actually really nice. And if you're someone who, isn't a stickler about having a body on frame thing with 4Runner and stuff, Passport sounds like a great alternative. Obviously, have not driven it yet, haven't even checked it out in person, but it seems, it's, I was really critical of the last generation because it just really seemed like it was, kind of half-assed, for lack of a better term. And this time it seems like they actually put a little bit more passion into it, because I think it's, again, a segment that's still very popular. And they also saw the golden opportunity of leaving the V6 in there. You have, again, a lot of traditionalists that, aren't happy, I'm sure, with the hybrid and the 4Runner. And, so this is kind of, I think, exciting for them too. So at ADX for Acura, I think, is going to be a great little car as well. And yeah, I think they pretty much played that pretty perfectly. It's going to be down on power compared to some of the competitors, but then again, same deal for Integra, and that hasn't hurt Integra sales. Integra sales are great. So I am hoping though that, this is something that we haven't seen with the Honda side, but I hope that Acura does do an ADX Type S. That would actually be really exciting to me, because then you have an all-wheel drive Type R essentially, finally. If they, did that kind of a parts combo, they, I guess, could do other things potentially. But as far as what fits, we're talking most likely Civic stuff. So we'll see. I don't know, but since Acura likes doing the Type S things, and they did it with Integra, that's actually what I'm most excited about, is the door that opens up. And if we finally get an all-wheel drive, Type R with the 10-speed auto, because I'm sure they wouldn't do it with a manual. Just that'd be, I think, a little bit too hard from an engineering standpoint. But surely that motor has to bolt up to the 10-speed that Honda has. So hoping maybe we see that, and that could be pretty sick, I think. So we'll see. But anyway, Six Licks is enjoying that it's the 86th of the live stream here as well. And B. Mitchell said, most interesting car spot today was a first-year Fisker Karma in the collection of a collector right now. Interesting. Yeah, it seems like there is a cult following for those, especially those early ones. These newer ones that they're trying to do, it's like, I think, more pathetic, from a viewpoint of just a company that just won't die, that they're trying to keep this old design around. But those early ones actually were very much ahead of their time, I think. And they did have a few celebrities that, enjoyed them and drove them and stuff. And I have no clue how they held up over the years. I'd be curious what your collector friend, thinks of it now. But I mean, I guess they held on to it at least. So that's something. But and I see Decepticon says the almighty Matt Moran, and Will from San Diego. Thanks for stopping by and saying hi. And Linda as well. Brian says, I saw a Suzuki Kizashi today. Nice. I haven't seen one of those in a while either. Miles says, since you said 86, by any chance, do you mean Grady 6, right? That's what Beth insists on calling them for sure. And let me see. B. Mitchell says, and that's even parked between a Porsche 930 and a Aston Martin DB7 Vantage. Nice. Sounds like a very cool collection. And thanks for saying hi as well, Robert. And Nicholas Wilder, thanks so much for rejoining as well. Looking forward to chatting with you tonight. And sorry, Shane, I missed your membership gifts there as well. I see that Danny still is not getting lucky here with a membership, but again, we'll make sure we are able to respond to Danny here. And let me see other questions here. And yeah, thanks so much, Shane, for your generosity though, and Nicholas too. And let me see, where were we? Vishal says, maybe you should try not saying a word about it this time, and one time you might get it. Maybe they'll swing the luck. Yeah, and I am going to try to just be a little more concise tonight and try to get more of the non-member questions as well. And so like Mark's asking, hey Matt, which brand do you think has the best steering wheel assist and adaptive cruise control, excluding Tesla, of course? Absolutely, it's Cadillac Super Cruise, or now GM Super Cruise. Super Cruise is still the best, most reliable, most reassuring, and hands-off, system that's really, really well done. Blue Cruise is still a little iffy. They continue to improve it. I haven't tested it extensively with these newer iterations because I hardly ever drive our Mach-E on the highway, and when I do, I'm just driving it myself. I really only like using the hands-free stuff on like less congested, more relaxed highway driving, not the like slicing and dicing in rush hour or anything. But yeah, absolutely. I'd say Super Cruise, Blue Cruise is a close-ish second. Yeah, those are the top ones. Luke says, spending the evening in Dallas, Texas, got some barbecue and Mexican food. Nice. That's one of my favorite things about going to Texas is the barbecue. That is always, and thankfully in all the car trips that I always go on in Texas, they always know people are expecting barbecue and they usually don't disappoint. Good Six says the ADX is weird. Seems like a Frankenstein HRV mixed with Integra. However, the powertrain is from Integra. However, the ADX has all-wheel drive, but the Integra doesn't. Yeah, so I think it's really, mostly just HRV with, the all-wheel drive system essentially, and the powertrain. I guess not the all-wheel drive, the powertrain, but same kind of packaging, same interior stuff as HRV in many ways, and just same. I think it's same wheelbase. I'm not sure 100%, but. Yeah, I know the length is longer for the ADX, but yeah. Bruce says, hey, Matt, what's the worst piece of advice you've received? Bruce, you definitely take the crown for the most thought-provoking questions that are always they're excellent questions, but it's so hard for me to think of an answer quickly. Worst piece of advice. I don't know. I mean, I think, whenever I was graduating college and I was debating whether or not I should actually pursue my degree, because I was trying to, I have a degree in financial planning. I was trying to, get a job in that. And this was kind of on the tail end of the recession and stuff. So it was not the best time for people looking for a job in finance and stuff. And it was just, it was tough to get a job. I wasn't top of my class either, which didn't help. But a lot of people were like, you got to use that degree. You got to use a degree. And I'm like, well, I just kind of want to give this YouTube thing a try. I know it sounds crazy, especially again, the time we're talking about, when most people weren't doing YouTube as any kind of, career or anything. But, if I would have just been scared out of doing it and would have just kept going, I mean, I'm sure I would have been happy helping people with their finances and would have found something eventually, but then I wouldn't have had this insane, wild, fun life that I've had, the past 12 years now of reviewing cars and all the awesome people, all the awesome cars, all the awesome places. Very, very grateful. So I'm just very happy that I chased my dreams, even when they seemed crazy at the time. Luke says, did you see the picture of the car haulers of Fiskars I sent you? I must not have seen that. I'm not sure which social platform we sent that on, but I'll have to check that out. If it was on Facebook, I haven't checked Facebook Messenger in a few days, so I'll have to check that out. That's interesting. If they're the new ones or the old ones, I'm curious. Because I'm guessing you're talking like Fisker Oceans and stuff. Or maybe you sent something a few weeks ago, Luke, if I remember correctly. And yeah, that was, they were being hauled somewhere east, I think, if I remember what you said. And so, I mean, yeah, I don't know. They were liquidated and some leasing company bought them. I don't know who is using them, but I'm curious to see those things start to be spotted on the roads a little bit more again. I don't know how they're actually going to plan on using them as functional vehicles, but we will see. Al says, the ADX seems to be a solid offering. They'll sell tons of, not a fan of it being a CVT, but I suppose buyers of it won't be too bothered by that. Yeah, I think that's the bottom line. Again, buyers don't care about Integra. CVT is fine in those. They sell lots of regular Integras. And so I think they just really go off the sales data. And if they can get away with it in one car, they figure they can do it in another. And I think they're right, Good Six says, what's some cars that you get really nostalgic when you see them? Mine are any 90s Hondas and Toyotas. They were everywhere during my childhood, but now there aren't any on the road anymore. Yeah, I think it's a lot of that stuff as well. It's always the stuff that you kind of grew up with is what you're nostalgic and sentimental about, I think, for a lot of people. And so for me, same as you, being mid 30s here, anything from the 90s, even some of the stuff from the 80s, because I saw a lot of 80s cars, especially because I grew up in an area that wasn't very wealthy. So a lot of people had some old cars. So even, remembering as a little kid seeing stuff from like, the 70s even, and 80s for sure on the roads around me when I was a kid. So even that kind of stuff is kind of always fun to see and remember. But then even, I think the one thing that always gets me excited is the people that are still rocking the sport compacts from like the 90s, but also like the early 2000s. Anytime I see, a Scion TC we've talked about in the past on the live streams, or, some of the older Civic SIs, like if I see the hatch Civic SIs, they did, what was it, like 2003 to 2004 or 5, I think. That generation is like super rare. Like no one was into those when those came out. I don't think it was like the biggest miss here, at least in the States, for that generation. Like no one wanted that version, and so I don't think they sold very many of them. So that's always like when I see one of them, I'm like, wow, like that's pretty rare. So any of those rare import compact things are always the things that I think get me the most excited. Yeah, always fun to see. Honestly, anything old, anything that's not anything older than the 2010s is always kind of a little interesting to be like, there's one of those still on the road, It's funny how I get more excited about seeing older cars than I do seeing, new fancy stuff half the time. But yeah, Cam says, spending lots of time in our new used 2016 RDX. I knew it had the V6, but dang, is that thing fast. Seen some 0-60 runs online. It's about 6 seconds flat. Doesn't have the 9-speed that everyone hates. Nice. Yeah, I mean, my cousin actually has that generation RDX. I'm not sure what year hers is, but she seems very happy with it. She's had it for a while, and yeah, they seem like they're pretty solid little cars. Glad you're enjoying yours, Cam. And yeah, Linda says maybe we should adopt Danny and give him 3 free answers. Yeah, I'll definitely help him out here tonight, just because I feel bad he's just not getting lucky. Car says looks like the Elantra N TCR edition keeps the stock motor, focuses on the aero, tires, wheels, brakes, and racing style interior exterior. Gotcha. So I mean, yeah, that kind of falls in line with what we're seeing with some other companies doing. I mean, look at WRX, same exact thing. I actually, funny enough, have the WRX TS here this week. Same deal, Brembos, the wheels, the adaptive dampers, the Recaros, some badging, and it's about it. But I mean, I guess they, figured people will buy it. We'll see if people do or not, but I can't blame Hyundai for trying that as well. So yeah, I mean, again, I'll take a better look at it. But the wing on the back seems a little overboard, though. But it's Hyundai; they sometimes like to go crazy, and I respect them for it. But let me see. Jordan says, "Did you try to connect your Apple Watch to an infotainment system yet?" I did not. I forgot about that last week. I should. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I mean, I guess I'd have to put my watch on like searchable mode for Bluetooth, because it never comes up as an option, but it would have to be on searching. So I'll have to remember that and try it again in this next week here, and I'll try and remember and get back to you there, Jordan, because I am curious about that. And Decepticon said, speaking of EV stuff, I saw a Mazda MX-30. Wow, that is rare. I'm assuming you're in California, because if you saw it outside of California, then that is impressive. That one made it out of the state on its 100 miles of range or whatever it has. But Dylan says, I wasn't able to watch the last few live streams. I've been on a drive from New England to Kansas and back. Anyway, I'm sure Ohio and Indiana drivers are lowering driver intelligence by 40%. Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I know the thing with Ohio is they don't even have any kind of inspection, which I know car enthusiasts really love, but it really means that not only maybe are the drivers a little questionable, but a lot of the cars, as far as their actual roadworthiness, are also questionable. And I think that's another thing that it can cause accidents if you're not keeping up on, you're driving around on bald tires and blown suspension and this, that, and the other, all these things that probably shouldn't be roadworthy, but in Ohio, anything goes with cars. So it has its pros and cons, I guess. But I hope you're enjoying the road trip there, Dylan. And that's really cool. I'd love to do more road trips in the future here. Hoping maybe next year we'll do a little one. We'll see. But Vishal says, Passport is also a solid update. Was pleasantly surprised. Now the pilot, like we were talking, needs the screen. Let me see. Good Stick says, but now we have to wait and see if they don't ruin the Ridgeline. And see, I think Ridgeline most likely will probably get all the Passport stuff, because again, it's also got the more rugged vibe. Doesn't have to worry about also being a family-friendly vehicle like the Pilot does. So I can see Pilot kind of diverging from Passport and Ridgeline. Maybe they'll actually, if they really want to, give 110% here, they should actually do a whole new clean sheet thing with Ridgeline, and again, same bones like we see with Passport, but switch that one up, and I don't know, do some kind of square headlight instead of the rectangular ones. Maybe it would be fun, or try and do something a little more unique. I don't know, we'll see, but I'm guessing that's up next, because I'm trying to think what else Honda has on deck that they need to worry about. But I'm pretty sure Ridgeline has got to be the oldest, that and Odyssey, and they just did a little refresh for Odyssey. But yeah, it's either Odyssey or Ridgeline's got to be the next one up for them. But let me see. Veslin says, interesting topic in Europe is Audi and Volkswagen having big problems with sales, including USA, all due to old ICE platforms and heavily investing in EVs that people don't want. Yeah, it's tough. I haven't seen all the breakdown of the data as far as how people are reacting to the gas stuff sticking around, because from what I saw, it seemed like most people were very content to just, stick with the current gas stuff. I think that they've done a fairly good job of keeping some of those things updated, or if not keeping them updated, then keeping them cheaper than the competitors. I think this is the big news we see with Jetta. Jetta sales are fantastic, and that's because it is still the old one they've had since 2018. But they just did new headlights and little tweaks here and there, and I will be having a new Jetta GLI here in the next few weeks, so stay tuned for that. But it's still the old car. And so whenever you're not going to new generations, you can kind of justify keeping the price tag, at the same point or even a little bit less than all of the new gen competitors. And, again, we're car people. We pay attention to this generation, that generation, these new features, this, but, most people don't care. And I think it's actually a very smart decision to not update in many cases, especially whenever it's still selling well, like we see with 4Runner. Honestly, I wonder if Toyota, not regrets going to a new generation 4Runner, but with some of the iffiness we've seen with these turbo motors and these new Toyotas, I mean, they seem to be fine. It seems like it's mostly just manufacturing. There's that one thing on the line for the Tundras and stuff. Hopefully, these motors are all solid, but I think there is a little trepidation from Toyota buyers who, typically are the type that like tried and true stuff, and anything new is going to be met with resistance, from a Toyota fan base. And so, with 4Runner selling so well for the old one, I almost wonder if they're considering the same tactic as, I don't know if they can even do this from a production standpoint, but the same tactic as Porsche and others, considering having old 4Runner sold alongside new 4Runner or something to kind of make everybody happy. But I think that's really the smart way to do it is, those old platforms are all paid for or written off or whatever the case is, but, they're settled from a financial standpoint, most likely. And as long as you can keep the suppliers up, there shouldn't be, again, I guess you're tying up factories, but aside from that, there's no other cost to keeping the old stuff around. And, again, people that are, not to say that people that aren't excited about new gen stuff or EVs are, only wanting old tech, but, I think that it's safe to say that a decent chunk of those buyers, they don't want the newest, flashiest, craziest thing. If they did, they'd probably be at least open to an EV or, the plug-in hybrids, other things. But the fact that, these people that really want the old ICE stuff, leave the old ICE stuff for them and let them have it, as long as, again, they're meeting the goals they need to meet from an emission standpoint. I don't think there's really anything to lose there from a manufacturing standpoint. So I'm curious, random tangent, but I'm just curious. Didn't hear that the old ICE platforms weren't doing well for them anymore. I mean, obviously there's going to be a natural drop off that'll gradually happen, but again, if you've freshen it up with new headlights and taillights, put a bigger screen in and stuff, I don't see that being a problem. And honestly, Volkswagen, I think there was a report back in the summer that said that there's a possibility the current generation GTI could actually stick around until 2035 because there is going to be a new gen GTI coming, but it's still going to be electric. They're still planning on doing that, and they're not backing away from that for GTI. So that's coming, I think, 2026 or 2027 maybe for that. But then they will sell it alongside the gas one. And so I think this is, again, the smart thing to do. If you are someone who's not excited about that, most likely you're totally fine with no change at all and buying a, at that point, 15-year-old GTI sounds probably great to someone in 2035 if they have that mindset. It's the forerunner of the Volkswagen world in a lot of ways as far as, that mentality of if it's not broke, don't fix it. I like it the way it is, and I'm not excited about this new stuff. Keep it around. And I think you're going to see a lot of that for the reason of people, again, just giving people what they want, but also the fact that they can't afford the new generations because they put all their eggs in the EV basket in many cases. And so, and I think that is still going to be the future. So I don't think it's smart to abandon the EV thing either, or even back away from it very much. I mean, you can tweak, the production estimates and the goals, but you don't want to give up on that either. So I think this is really the best way to go about it is keep the old stuff around. I think that lines up with what those buyers want anyway. And then, just forge ahead with the new stuff and keep going on that road as long as you can. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Austin says, "Hey Matt, I hear the federal EV tax credit is going away. How do you think that will affect sales? Could we see manufacturers drop prices?" It's a very good question. So I think it'll be interesting to see how different companies play this because honestly, I don't know. I really don't know. The only thing that I do know is if they remove all incentives for cars to be built here, then you are going to see a drastic move away from American manufacturing for car companies, because they would love to build everything. And if if there is no resistance to building stuff in other countries, again, that'll come down to, I guess, the tariffs that are supposedly planned. But I feel like the tariffs, if they actually happen, which I'm skeptical about, if that actually happens, it might keep some manufacturers in the States here. But I think you're going to see a lot of companies be like, well, we came here for the tax credit, and we came here because it was going to be an advantage. And if it's not going to be an advantage, then turn those factories over to build something else, and scale things up. And I think you will see, and this is also why, like, I guess part of the reason I didn't realize it when I was reporting on this in the weekly update, whenever Nissan said they were cutting 9,000 jobs, but they said that was as a result of the tariffs, and just the fact that, again, they can start shifting stuff around because they know they're not going to need as much of that American manufacturing. And so we're already seeing a little bit of that, and I think you're going to see more of that. Now, as far as how manufacturers cope with it from a sales standpoint, I mean, they're already, a lot of these, they're struggling to even make them money makers. I think GM has said that they are, hoping to have these EVs be profitable pretty soon. I think they are almost profitable, or very, very close to it, if they haven't quite crossed that line yet. But and Ford is swearing that any new EVs that come out for them, I believe, are going to be actually profitable, very early on as well. So, I think that they're probably just going to hope that it's one of those things, everyone got in, they got the tax credit, and now the prices are going up. We saw, you can kind of get a preview of this because we saw this once before with the tax credit for the initial version phased out at a certain production level. And so if you remember, Tesla lost the credit for a while, GM lost it because they sold too many bolts. And I think there was maybe Nissan Leaf lost it. There was a couple that lost it, and then for a while there, you didn't have a tax credit on those vehicles, and then it came back with the way they redid it. And so I think, if I remember correctly, the way Tesla handled it back then, they did cut prices, but not all the way. I think they kind of met people in the middle, and tried to soften the blow a little bit. But again, I don't think a lot of these companies have a whole lot of wiggle room. They've already gone about as low as they can go, because, I mean, again, they're trying to buoy these EV sales. Again, it's still a growing market share. It's not declining. Just the demand that has declined, but it is still growing. So I think it's just something they're going to have to just do what they can do and see what happens. But I don't think you're going to see too many companies drop the price accordingly as a result of losing that. But yeah, in my opinion, it's a shame that that's going to be going away. Because again, I think regardless of what you think about EVs, it brought a ton of jobs. I mean, look at all the factories I've covered that have popped up in the past, few years here. It's been noticeable, especially all these ones popping up in like Alabama, Arkansas, all these places in the South are having these new factories, and we'll see what the fate of those factories ends up becoming. Veslin says Green Deal and EVs hype is going away, the market becoming too saturated. We'll just see. I don't agree. I don't think it's too saturated. I think, obviously the people that already wanted one already have one. They got theirs, and now it's just a matter of convincing people that are on the sidelines. Same thing as every smartphone, every other piece of tech. You charge a premium for it early on, then you start rolling on the discounts, and you start doing buy one get one free and all this. It's gonna be the same thing. I think car companies just didn't realize that EVs were going to be treated the same way as tech from a adoption standpoint. And I think that is the lesson that hopefully they've learned now is you're going to have the early adopters that pay top dollar, and then everyone else needs to be convinced with some nice discounts. It's kind of the same as any other car, just a little bit more extreme, I think, with EVs. But let me see. Danny says, what are your thoughts on an 89 Mazda 323 GTX? I know it's old, but an 80s hot hatch. Yeah, those have always been super cool. I don't even know if I've ever seen one on the streets. I've seen pictures and read about them, but yeah, all those, there's so many fun little ideas they had back in the 80s with various hot hatches. Good Stick says, I miss the styling of 90s cars. They were so simple and were not too outrageous than what is coming out now. Designs coming out now will not age well. I think there's some of that for sure. And I think, when you look back, though, there's some of that you could, I think, have said in, even back then, like I remember as a little kid seeing a Dodge Intrepid for the first time. If you remember those, whenever they did that bold, like cab forward kind of design on those, there was one time my grandparents rented one, and seeing when this is like, I guess those came out, I think 94, 95, 96, something around there. And I remember it was like brand new, like first one on the streets kind of deal, and being like, wow, like that thing looks crazy. And those all vanished really quickly too, it seems. It's really sad because I thought they were still actually really cool. But some of those things, I think, some of the more daring designs back then even seem a little iffy, I mean, even like Aztec, for example, really bold, didn't age well, didn't ever go over well, I think, initially either, but I don't think it's really aged well, although now we're seeing some companies kind of copying that in a way in some cases. But yeah, I think there's some highlights and some lowlights and a lot of the stuff back then. And in any generation of cars, there's some big misses. And Luke says, I noticed my 2020 Acura TLX adaptive cruise really hesitates if a car moves out from in front of me. I test drove a Maverick and it responded instantly if someone moved. Yeah, that's just a matter of those sensors getting smarter and the logic getting a little more confident in the newer adaptive cruise systems. They were previously, very conservative and also just very much not intelligent with the way they were sensing that stuff. They wanted to be overly cautious, which is the right way to go, especially, with something that was a little bit less advanced than the tech we have these days. But yeah, now they've gotten a lot better about the second that car starts moving, or even like in some of the things I've had recently, the second I put my turn signal on and start moving the wheel, it senses that I'm going to be getting out of the way and it starts applying gas pretty quickly. Some do it better than others, but yeah, there's some still where I can't remember. There was one just recently where I, put the turn signal on, got in the left lane, and I just sat there for like 5 seconds before it's like, oh, okay, now we can start going. So not everyone has, the newest logic there to do it well, but some of them are getting better with that for sure. And Luke says, it was Fisker Oceans in New Mexico. I followed that car hauler until El Paso. Nice. That's crazy. Yeah, I'm very curious what's going on with those. And I see Zach says, any news/thoughts on a potential Hyundai Toyota hydrogen cooperation? Do you think this means anything for the sports car market? The sports car market, the only thing I can think is, the Vision N74. But as far as Hyundai and Toyota themselves, yeah, there was that thing last month where they were supposedly the executives they were meeting. I haven't heard any update on that. So yeah, I forgot about that. But yeah, there's been no news stories I've seen since as a result of that. So if they did, agree upon anything or make any plans, that's all, I guess, stuff we will see down the road that's not being made public just yet. But maybe we'll see an announcement soon. I mean, again, with the hydrogen thing, I think they all realize like they cannot really be competitive against each other if they want to ever have a hope of that going, getting off the ground. At least for now, they gotta all partner up. Like every single one of them has to be like one unified front if they want to try and get hydrogen to go anywhere. Because I still think hydrogen it doesn't have a great future until the hydrogen production gets way, way better. And as far as, the packaging and the just there's a lot of problems with hydrogen in my opinion still. So, and I think as far as sports car market, you could see maybe some companies, playing around with burning it like, Toyota is in that race series. But that's not a great solution either because the fuel economy is terrible as of right now. And there's just everything I've seen about hydrogen. I mean, maybe I haven't seen the right stuff or something, but everything I've seen, it doesn't seem like it has any kind of future anytime soon. And so, yeah, I think if we're not going to, if we're going to have some type of combustion thing for the sports car market, for motorsports, whatever, I think it's going to be e-fuels. E-fuels is going to be, because there's no modification needed. It's, all the same stuff. And so I think e-fuels is the only other thing to me that will kind of be there alongside the EVs to support, the classic car market, the motorsports market, anything that, has been built before 2035 or 2040 or whenever, these companies decide to go fully electric. But again, unless there's some massive breakthrough where they can store hydrogen in a much more compressed or compact fashion, or just some way to make it way more efficient so you can have smaller tanks and all that, but it's tough right now. And Carr says, last week I saw a 90s Suzuki Samurai. One of my friends has an SX4. Hers is metallic orange and looks really cool. Makes me think of the SX4 WRC and the Escudo in Gran Turismo, which Suzuki was in USA. That is, I don't know if I'm even saying it right, but the Escudo Gran Turismo 2, that thing was my champ. I probably put more miles on that car in that game than any other car, because that thing was just unstoppable. You put that car in any race in Gran Turismo 2 and you were just just destroying everyone. Once you had one of those, I don't remember how. I think there was a certain series you had to do to win that car. Once you won that car, it was like you were on easy street from that point on. It was like you just ran that thing in every race you could possibly run it in, and you were set. But yeah, the SX4, actually, I have there's another parent friend that we have that is with our friends with our daughter. They have an SX4 as well, actually, and still are rocking it. They have their big SUV as well, but the second car is an SX4, and it's always funny to see because that's the only one I ever see around here. Yeah, Suzuki Samurais are awesome as well. It's so sad that Suzuki couldn't stick around to bring the Jimneys here, because I think that would have been a really nice hit. And I'm still waiting to see whatever happened to that VinFast with the VF3 is the actual promising one, I think, where that was like a little Suzuki Samurai kind of thing, and it's electric and it's supposed to be like 20 grand or whatever. I hope that still happens, but we'll see. And Good Stick says, what happened to car quality? 20 years ago, Dodge made very reliable trucks, but now they're junk. Almost every new car doesn't have the quality as they once had, excluding the Japanese brands. And even the Japanese brands are struggling in some cases. I think the problem is that, everything is just getting so advanced. And whenever you add stuff, you add complication, you add more failure points. Every single innovation usually adds failure points. And that's just the bottom line. It's very simple. And I think this is why at least one good thing with EVs is less failure points with those motors. And so, maybe the battery packs, will still have some issues, but as far as the motors themselves, they're very simple. And so at least we'll be able to, kiss the motor worries goodbye, for the most part, once that becomes more mainstream. But aside from that, yeah, that's the problem, whether we're talking software or we're just talking more advanced engines, more advanced transmissions, more advanced powertrain. Even, transmissions, it's a simple math equation. How many failure points do you have in a 6-speed automatic? How many failure points do you have in a 10-speed automatic? 4 more, right there. So obviously just adding gears doesn't necessarily mean that you have, more concern, but it's just, the fact is you have more failure points, and it's tough, even for the brands like, again, Toyota and Honda and others. Even they have some struggles here as they try and add in these new things that have typically in the past been problematic. Turbo motors have been a little problematic in some cases in the past. Obviously, the past decade has shown us it doesn't have to be the case, but that potentially in the past was something that was a little more temperamental. And so obviously engineers are brilliant, and we see some very reliable stuff that does go the distance these days. And I think it's also depending on, again, what options you get and all that, but as far as like the example of Dodge there with the Ram trucks, that's, again, you do see some of these things whenever anyone does new introductions of a new engine. You're gonna have teething problems the first year, even a new generation of a vehicle. This is why the traditional wisdom is, if you like a vehicle, at least wait for the second model year, for them to get the early teething stuff out of the way, see what happens whenever you sell them to the general public, and then by the second model year. That's always, I haven't abided by that myself, but that is something that I think is smart. And I guess technically we did abide by that once, because with the Mach-E, it just kind of was fortunate with the timing. So it wasn't like I deliberately did that, but with the Mach-E, I was kind of happy we were getting a 2022, because the 2021s were the first model year. I was like, okay, well, this gives them a little bit of time to get some of the glitches worked out, and I'm not going to be one of the first beta testers for these things. As a result, knock on all the wood, our 2022 has been no issues aside from, again, the rear brakes like to tear themselves apart. But aside from that, and by that I mean just scoring. There's just little grooves in the rear rotors because we don't drive it, I guess, enough apparently. But yeah. But yeah, as far as car quality, it's just, that's the bottom line. I think it's just, and it's tough for everybody. It's not just certain brands. I think obviously some brands are worse than others, but I think everyone just struggles with, there's gonna be so much crap. There's gonna be all these sensors now on everything. That's all. It'd be just a nightmare from a failure point standpoint. Because again, this is why Toyota was the most reliable brand, because they didn't change anything. Everything was old, tried and true. The second you quit doing old and tried and true, you're in uncharted territory, and that's just the way it goes for anything new. And so it's just, we're in this phase where we're seeing a lot of that. So I think the perception is that quality is really bad right now, but I think what we're actually seeing is, yes, there is bad quality for sure, in some cases worse than others, but what we're seeing is actually just a lot of change. We're seeing a lot of new generations, new engine designs, new downsizing, new electrification, new software, new technology. We're evolving quickly, with the adaptive cruise control systems. We're seeing a lot of change, and it's happening faster and faster because, again, people demand, or at least car companies think that people demand more and more tech, more and more advancements. And so we have to keep up with that pace. Look at how much Toyota Camrys changed from 1990 to 2010. I mean, sure, they changed a little bit, but for all of the 90s and all the 2000s, you had essentially the same radio in the Camry, or maybe it had a different faceplate, but it was, you had a 6-disc CD changer. If you had one of the nicer ones, or a regular CD player, you had your basic buttons. There's no unknowns there. By that point, everyone had known how to figure out how to make a CD player or a radio. There was no challenge. You just copy and paste, put it on the next one, and make sure it, looks right in the design of the new dash, whatever. But, the changes were all hard points. Let's change the plastic molding to look different for this generation. And, when you're talking about hard points, you're talking about basic things that they had already mastered. There was no issues with the new generation Camry going from one to the next, for all these years. And then now it's, well, this year we're adding in 15 more sensors, and we're doing this and that and the other. And it's like, well, of course you're going to have more issues with that. And so I think that's really what we're seeing. It's just, we're seeing more change at a faster pace than we've ever seen before. And that's not a good recipe for reliability for anything. We're not even talking about cars, but any tech, anything in general, it's going to be more problematic with that. So I think that's really, at least my take on it. But certainly it doesn't excuse things, because, again, cars are more expensive than ever as well, as a result of all these advancements that, again, people supposedly demand. And this is why every week I preach about how I want to do a bare bones car company where we roll up windows, basic radios, and safety features that are, good. But other than that, keep it simple. I think there's a huge untapped market of people that would be totally happy with that. But yeah, it's not excusable, but it's just like, it's just really, really hard to do that. And it wasn't hard to do in the past, honestly. And that's, I think, the biggest thing. And this is why, again, we see Volkswagen going to Rivian, being like, okay, well, Rivian's got, some pretty reliable stuff, it seems. So let's just go to that. I think the companies are getting desperate, especially like Volkswagen, with their missing deadlines and, bleeding with sales and money and all this. That's where, again, your pride goes out the window, and you say, okay, let's just buy whatever we need to buy to keep this thing going, because we're clearly out of our comfort zone in a lot of ways. And so this is why we see so many partnerships, so many of these types of things. But anyway, I'll try and keep my answers shorter here, because we're getting behind on the questions. But let me see. Decepticon said the MX-30 was in Washington State. Okay, well, I guess that's at least on the West Coast there, so not too far from home base for them. But Shane says, what would your personal pick be in the low 30s? Currently looking at WRX, Civic Si, GTI. I'm in California, so no real need for all-wheel drive. In that case, yeah, it comes down to how badly you want a bunch of power, because WRX is still going to be the best bang for your buck at 30 grand. 271 horsepower, no one matches that. If you're open to something that's not those three, I would say Elantra N all day long would be my top pick at that price point, especially if you don't need all-wheel drive. Elantra N. Same money as those cars, pretty much. More horsepower aside from WRX. the awesome exhaust, which WRX does not have, Civic Si does not have, GTI doesn't really have either. Pretty good shifter, not as good as Si, arguably maybe not as good as WRX2, depending on your preference. But Elantra N, yeah, that would be my buy in the low 30s. If you're looking for something new, if you are looking used, then that, opens up a bunch of other stuff. But I won't complicate your question too much. So we're talking new, Elantra N. We'll leave it at that. But if you have any follow-up questions, though, feel free to ask Shane. And thanks for stopping by, Blaze. William says the Tacoma would be a prime candidate for a classic version like the Ram with a tried and true V6 and old gen hardware. Yeah, it is. I really wonder if that idea was floated at Toyota and why that ended up not happening. Because I think, honestly, yeah, it would be a really good idea for them, especially, again, with a little bit of pushback. I mean, I think Tacoma sales are fine. I haven't seen recently, but I don't think they're in any kind of crisis at Toyota. So I'm sure they're all right, and they figure people will just get used to it and deal. But I don't know. And Linda, thanks so much for being a member for 27 months now. I really appreciate it. She says, in the 50s, my father wisely said the fancier in the item, the more there is to break. Absolutely. I mean, and so, they're saying it in the 50s. It didn't get any better. It's still the same stuff these days. It's, when you push the envelope, you have problems. And this is why the European brands typically depreciate faster, because the technology moves even faster in those, and it ages more poorly in those because, again, they're on the bleeding edge. And also they over-engineer a lot of stuff. So you have more failure points, more stuff that breaks. And that is, it's great if you're buying a brand new one, you're leasing a new one or whatever. But that's why they drop like rocks. And that's why, it's because those European brands usually are more advanced, but it really hurts you in the long run because, again, these things haven't been things that have been, R&D'd quite as much as, you see from other companies that are a little more hesitant with that stuff. And Jay, thanks so much for being a member for 17 months now. I really appreciate it. Hope you're doing well. He says, hopefully you and your family are doing great. Huge update. Traded the Type R in, unfortunately, and picked up a 2022 ILX A-Spec white with red inside. Nice combo. And congrats on the swap there. Hopefully, I know you said unfortunately, and obviously you're downgrading there from a performance standpoint, but hope you're enjoying it, and I hope everything's okay, and hope you don't miss that Type R too much. But if you do, just know that I sympathize with you here. I miss my sportier vehicle as well, and so yeah. But congrats on the new edition though, nonetheless, and yeah, hope you're doing well, Jay. And let me see other questions here. Vishal says, price is one big reason I chose the 24 Jetta SE. It's very well priced for what you get, whereas a Civic is a couple grand more for a lesser trim with less features. Yeah, and, that works. I mean, I really think that a lot of people, obviously price has always been the most important thing, but I think especially these days, again, with people being burned out with so many features and, like Honda, for a while, they're even ditching the LX trim and, forcing everyone into all these luxury features that a lot of people still don't want. A lot of people don't need leather. They don't need all this fancy stuff. And so I love that the Jetta and others are leaning into that affordability, because that's what we desperately need right now. And so that's, yeah. But yeah, happy to hear your thoughts on that as well, Vishal. And Linda says, charge me less and I'm happy with older tech. I typically buy used to save money. Yeah, and I think this is why the used market has really been so strong these past few years as well. It's now finally kind of softening the prices a little bit there. But I think a lot of people, they don't need it. And they like seeing, how does this tech age? How well are these things actually going to hold up over time? And I think the used market is a great way to to do that and also get a nice savings as well. And let me see. B. Mitchell says, yeah, Dodge and Ram were the poster children for milking a platform until the dies break, like the Challenger and the classic Ram. Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of Challenger, I just read the other day, apparently there's a lot of Challengers and Chargers still on lots, like 23s that they haven't gotten rid of, which is interesting. So if you are someone who's mourning the loss of Mopar muscle, you could still go out and buy one. It sounds like there are still some out there. And Good Six says, yeah, people still bought the Challengers even though the old gen came out in 2008. Yeah, another example of, you keep it fresh. I think Dodge was the prime candidate, not only of just milking a platform, but doing it well. And I mean, with Toyota, I think they kind of just had, some kind of appeal that was already just there. I think with Dodge, that was certainly the case as well. But, I think they just did a better job of keeping things fresh. and doing really timeless styling. Obviously, they have the luxury of the vintage stuff to lean on, but just they really, I think, did a masterclass in how sales increased. They didn't just like stay where they were or slowly drop off. Like they got better every single year until the end. And I think that's the power of special editions and increasing performance, and then keeping the styling fresh every few years. Like and that's I think why so many people are probably so caught off guard by this giant switch from Dodge as far as them failing so badly. I mean, against a lot, or FCA and Dodge and Chrysler, all of them in particular, they're no strangers to hardship. Again, they've been on the ropes many times before, but I think Dodge played the 2010s so perfectly and into the 2020s here that they had some really smart marketing. I don't know if that team has since moved on. I know Tim Kuniskis is now gone from Dodge and stuff, but I'm kind of curious because I mean, Tim was in charge there for most of this Charger development for this new gen version, but it's just interesting to see that they just went from really being cash cow central with Dodge to now being in this very precarious place. I think it'll do okay for them. I think, again, a lot of people still don't understand that there's a gas-powered version of the new Charger coming. I think once that becomes more common knowledge, I suppose, among enthusiasts, and people start seeing like, oh, wait, this one's got a gas engine. Well, now I actually like the styling. And maybe I'm not actually opposed to these new Chargers as much as I thought I was. And then people start modding them if they can unlock the ECU and stuff. But it's a inline turbo 6 engine. I mean, look at 2 JZs and stuff. If this has any kind of potential, I think the crate motor version Dodge already put out does like 1,000 horsepower or something. I mean, so the motors probably have potential, and if they don't from the factory, it's not going to be hard. If Dodge is already making crate motors, you can buy the parts and you're going to have a drag strip monster, even if you don't want to go for the electric version, which will be the ultimate drag strip monster. But I think Dodge is going to be okay. Hopefully, we'll see. I am able to now say I know when I will finally be driving the new Charger Daytona. I'm not allowed to say exactly when yet, I don't think, but it won't be too far off because keep in mind they are labeling the first ones as 2024s. So, that limits us to the end of the year here. So sometime before the end of the year, I will be driving the Charger finally and giving my thoughts on the electric one. Gas one, we now are hearing is coming potentially by early summer. But it's anyway, another tangent, but I'm excited for that. And let me see. Jordan says, when the newest Mazda concept goes to production, do you think that will contribute to a resurgence of pop-up headlights? I'm going to be curious to see how they carry that component to a production vehicle, primarily in Europe, because I think in Europe that I don't know the exact specifications of what's limited, but pop-up headlights haven't come back there because of pedestrian issues. And that's the main reason why. I mean, it's such a slender little thing that I'm assuming that they could maybe get away with that. I just don't know exactly what they can and can't get away with for the European market. I wouldn't be shocked if you saw that same cutout remain, but you saw just a little like slit for just a permanent DRL instead of something that actually moves, or maybe just for certain markets it would move or something. I'm not sure. I hope it retains exactly the same styling we see there. And I think most of it probably will stick around, but they may make tweaks, but I'd love to see the resurgence of pop-up headlights. You'll never see giant pop-ups though for, again, pedestrian reasons. I don't think pedestrian deaths are already bad enough. You start having, extra things that aren't pillowy smooth on the front of a vehicle. It's not going to take us in the right direction. So I don't think we'll see pop-up headlights return, in mass, but we could see some limited little, fun things like that in one way or another, whether it's actually coming up out of the car or it's like an illusion of, something kind of popping up or whatever. But I think we'll maybe see some more of that a little bit. It'd be cool. I'd love to see it for sure. And two-track Jack says, how long did it take for Tesla to become profitable? Wasn't it like 17 years or something like that? Yeah, it was something like that. I don't remember the exact year. I think they became profitable. Was it like 2018, 2019 or something? I don't know if it was quite 17 years, but it was a long time. And they were burning a lot of cash for a long time. And that's the funny thing is, again, people just don't remember even recent history. I see so many reports like, oh, look at Ford's bleeding cash. Every car company is bleeding cash, and it's like Tesla was bleeding cash for 10 years as well, or however long it was. And then look at them now; they're massively popular. And again, that was even it took them that long just because hardly anyone was buying electric cars back then, and they were the only ones really doing it. Nowadays, again, sales are way higher than they were in the 2010s at any point in time for Tesla. I don't think. It's way better now. So this is why you're seeing these. Obviously, people have faster expectations for this profitability now, but like it's so funny how Tesla had the biggest. I don't know what the word is. I guess the biggest pass on that for so long, and no one held them to that high degree. And now all of a sudden, every other company is expected to do it in half the time Tesla did it in, and I don't think that's fair to the other companies. So I think that's just part of the game. Is you got to invest a ton of money up front, and then you hopefully reap the rewards of that down the road. And I think that's still going to be the case. Again, I don't think EVs are going to go down in popularity. I think it's just going to be a slower burn than most companies thought. But Nate, thank you so much for a super chat there. His first super chat here. He says, with Ferrari's recent announcement, they will be entering the Grand S Mondial air balloon race. What hot air balloon tech do you expect to see trickle down to auto markets? P.S. Hope that eye's okay. Yeah. So Nate is actually a friend and a neighbor here, and we went to a trampoline park today, and they had some squishy balls that you could we had like an impromptu dodgeball game, and he got me in the eye pretty good, but it's totally fine now. So thanks, Nate. But yeah, I know nothing about any kind of air balloon races there, but yeah, I have zero input on, on that, unfortunately. But anyone else that wants to share their thoughts there, I see B. Mitchell says Ferrari is already good at making a bunch of hot air. That is true. So maybe they will be the best at that. Yeah, I think as long as it sounds good, that's the biggest thing. The biggest thing with the new what is the new supercar? I already forgot the name of it. They have, everyone's complaining about that thing, not sounding good. So I think for Ferrari, at the end of the day, they just need to put like a giant, like cherry bomb muffler on the top of the hot air balloon flame thing or whatever you call that. I have no clue. And make it as loud as possible. And then that will probably win them some fans. But yeah, I didn't even hear about that. If that is an actual real thing, or if I'm just reading like an Onion article, I don't know. But that's interesting. And thank you, Nate, for the first super there. And thanks for stopping by. Hope you guys are recovering as well from all the jumping around on the trampolines today. And let me see. Other questions here. Where were we? I'm going to get a drink here while I find my place. Jugo says, do you think that Chevy Equinox EV is the best value car you can buy now? I don't know if it's the absolute best, but it is one of the top ones in my opinion, for sure. It is a really solid little car. I think also the Nissan Kicks is another one that's like fantastic value for money. Honestly, the Nissan Sentra as well is really good for value, but I think Equinox EV, absolutely. It is a lot of car. It's a lot of space. Also, Chevy Trax is another one. I see it tracks like every 5 minutes on the road around here, if not more often than that. I mean, every day without fail. If I'm driving somewhere, I will see a Chevy Trax, the new ones. They're everywhere. And I think that's another one that just people love the value of that. And it's a really solid little car for the money. So I think Equinox EV is another example of, Chevy doing really well with that low cost stuff. So yeah, I think it's really good. My problem with Equinox EV is no CarPlay. If it had CarPlay, honestly, I'd consider it as a replacement for our Mach-E, because again, I love the lower price point. And it's still got everything that we would really want, and enough space. And I think they're great. And Jordan says, I think if GM would have increased the cabin room, styling an EV mode range on the Chevy Volt, it could have been a competitor to the new Prius. Yeah, Chevy Volt is a big miss. I think that could have been huge. Again, I don't think they're, selling the new Prius Primes like crazy, but absolutely, I think the Volt just was killed off a few years too soon. It was like right as plug-in hybrids were starting to become popular, is when the Volt really kind of went away. And if they would have just had the faith to hang on there, for a few more years, I think that Volt would have actually been really, really, really good for them. And I'm kind of surprised they haven't rushed to bring that back. Honestly, and I'm sure there's internal, standards they hold themselves to, but what is stopping them from literally taking the same volts? I mean, maybe making a few, subframe reinforcements so that you can actually have it be, safe and crash test and stuff, but take the old Volt and literally just resurrect it with some tweak styling. I think that's probably wouldn't be a terrible idea because, again, just anything plug-in hybrid. And I mean, it's strange because they even have, in China, there's a plug-in hybrid gas Equinox, and I don't know what's so hard about ramping up the production of those components to bring those to the States, but I think they're saying 2027 for a plug-in hybrid Equinox. And it's by that point, again, I think we're going to be in a second phase of EV adoption, and they'll miss the boat on that again. We'll see. I mean, obviously, plug-in hybrids are still going to be here to stay for a while, but it's just kind of unfortunate they're not able to. They just Chevy sometimes times things a little bit. Unfortunately, and it doesn't play out for them. And there's other stuff like Equinox EV, where even a lot of these new Chevy EVs coming, they might be poorly timed right now because of the phase we're in for adoption. But I think that they are going to set themselves up so that once people do want to get into this next generation adoption phase, I think Chevy's going to have a really fleshed out lineup that other companies won't have, and I think it will hopefully pay dividends for Chevy. They still seem very confident in their direction, and I don't have any reason to doubt them. I think they are doing a pretty good job there, and so I hope it does well for them. Jedediah says, any chance you're going to get any of the new Mini models? I hope so. Typically BMW and Mini don't send me press vehicles. I got my first one this summer. They sent me an X5M competition. I am going to try. So that's kind of a different fleet that I get the BMWs and the Minis from, or where I've gotten them from in the past. So I'm going to see if they can maybe send me some of these new ones whenever I do a new wave of a new rotation, I should say, of vehicles from this other fleet. Hopefully over the winter or maybe spring, get some stuff in. And I'm hoping I get a couple because I really want to try out the new Mini. I want to even any of them. The Countryman, seems pretty cool. I've started to actually see a couple on the roads around here. And so, yeah, I'm hoping to test some, but they're always very hard with giving me stuff. They have a mileage limitation. And since I'm not super close to any of the hubs for the fleets they're always one of the ones that in the past hasn't sent me stuff, even though basically every other company is fine with it. But I'm hoping so. But Minis in the past have never done well for me views wise either. So that's another reason why I'm not, rushing to find a way to review one. But personally, I love the brand, so I'd love to review all the new Minis if I could. So we'll see. And Chad says, Mercedes seems completely lost. What are your thoughts on the brand? I could go on for a while about this one, but I think for me, yes, they have kind of lost their way in a little bit. And I think they're also just kind of learning the same lesson some other companies are learning as well, of getting a little too ambitious with the EV stuff early on, not doing it with the best execution as well, which I think also hurt them. If it was really well executed, I think it would have gone over better. But I mean, I had the EQS SUV last fall, and just the brakes were so unpredictable. The whole thing I don't know. And I actually complained about this. If you watched my Mercedes review this week on the GLC, the throttle was laggy in that. The GLA 35 that I had, that was, I think, early this year. The throttle was laggy, and that, just whoever is tuning. No offense, because these companies, they have brilliant people working for them that are, far better engineering a car than I could ever do. But I don't know who is engineering the throttle inputs in any of these new Mercedes, but they're all consistently bad. And I'm guessing it's a choice they made. They think it's better for some reason or another, but I don't know. It's not just me. Everyone complains about it seems, and they still have stuck with it for now. And so I think just that kind of stuff, it's okay, if it was expensive and maybe ugly to some people and stuff as well, if it drove great, then okay, you'll get people that'll give it a pass. But then it doesn't even drive that great. So then it's there's really hardly any redeeming qualities for these things anymore. Aside from, I'd say they're still probably some of the safest vehicles on the road. But, aside from that, it's really hard to make a case for any Mercedes right now. Every time I have under review, they're consistently the highest price stuff out there in a lot of cases. And you don't get more than you get from a comparable BMW and even a comparable Audi in some cases, even though the Audis are sometimes a little bit more dated. I see no reason to pay the premium for the Mercedes, especially over the BMW, if all you want is, giant screens and bold designs. And then I've also heard about the quality issues that Mercedes is having. And they have some really just problematic stuff from a production standpoint. I've heard of, mismatched, like there's been vehicles that have been delivered to dealers with like door panels that don't match, like they're not the right colors. Just bizarre stuff where it's like they must do zero actual quality checks before these things like roll off the lines, because there's some stuff that like unless you are blind, like you would see these things. So they're like actually not looking at them coming off the line, like truly unimaginable stuff. There's been other stuff where like there's been some things that haven't been installed for some reason. They literally like throw them in the trunk and expect the dealers to install some of the stuff that should have been installed at the factory. Like there's just weird stuff. So I don't know if some of that's just there's been some stuff falling through the cracks from a production level standpoint, but then again, it's just the engineering standpoint. There's issues, pricing, marketing is bad. It's just like all through the company, like every department is dropping the ball collectively. And so when you have everyone doing it at the same time and no one's pulling their weight properly, that is just, you see, in my opinion, the esteem and the regard for Mercedes just dropping. And then again, if you actually drive them and you experience them like I do, then it's like there's some cool stuff for sure. There's some very impressive things. Stereos are fantastic. I think the infotainment on the vertical screen is actually pretty good. And there's some redeeming things there, but not enough whenever you have such good competition these days. So yeah, Mercedes is these days probably one of the last brands I recommend for any of the categories they compete in. I can't think of none of the categories they compete in would I rather have a Mercedes over anything else. And honestly, it's probably a lot of times even a distant second or third in many cases, if not worse. It's just not good, especially again if you care about money at all. But anyway. Vancy says, "Happy Sunday, guys! Playing Forza while I listen. That's awesome. Enjoy the gaming there." And let me see. Darnell's asking about my thoughts on the upcoming passport redesign. Looks to be a bigger departure. Yeah, we talked about this early on in the live stream here as well, but I think they did play it very, very well. And I think it's going to do well for them. But yeah, I talked about it in the weekly update as well, but also earlier here in the live. So I don't want to repeat myself too much. So I want to get caught up on questions, but I think they did a great job on it. I'm really pleasantly surprised they did as much differentiation as they did. And Gustic says EV Hondas are going to be a little strange. Honda is known for their engines in both motorcycles and cars. True. But I'm hoping that they do, find their way. I think Prologue, you will soon hear my thoughts on Prologue and ZDX. Obviously, again, that's just more badge engineering than it is an actual thing done by them. But I do hope that they kind of find their stride, and I think that they will. And I'm hoping that, again, they have fun stuff like the sounds that they're proposing and all that. I think it'll hopefully make it a little bit more fun. But I hope that they do okay. I see Zach says, "You're the freaking man, Matt. Much thanks." I appreciate the love, Zach, and thanks for stopping by. And Marlon says, "Hey, Matt, how's it going? I saw on Mopar Insiders that the new Charger is going to have an 8-speed transmission." Interesting. I thought... Yeah, I can't remember because I thought I covered transmission whenever they said the gas version, but maybe I didn't get that info. I don't recall because I don't remember what it was going to have. So if Mopar Insiders is saying it'll be the 8-speed, that's easy to believe. It's almost kind of a given that it would just continue on with the ZF 8-speed because that's what they were doing in RAM, and I'm assuming it's gonna be the same exact stuff for everything that's using that inline 6. Is if the ZF 8-speed has been adapted to work with that, like we see in RAM, then it'll do the same for all the other vehicles, I'm sure, as well. So they have a good relationship with ZF. It's a fantastic transmission. No reason to change that. And Luke says, "I wish Honda would take the Passport and make a removable back like the GMC Envoy XUV type thing. That would be amazing." That would be amazing. That'd be probably a little... I guess Honda's open to funky stuff, but I think if you're going to see anything like that, you'll probably see it in some kind of like reborn element. If they ever are bold enough to do something like that, that could be something that you could see. But yeah, I see Stratus asking, "What do you all think of the ride Jake Paul came out in?" I did not watch the fights. I have no clue what he came out on, but I'm take a random guess that it wasn't the classiest of rides. But Jay says, long time no see. Hope you and your family are doing great. Yeah, thanks again, Jay. And I saw the other member question there. Jordan says, does the data collection of speed, automatic headlight sensors, LiDAR, and accidents of a consumer contribute to speed bump implementations, race car game development, streetlights, and speed limit signs? No, I think most of the data stuff is for marketing and sales standpoint. They can't use. I mean, I think I can't remember all the details, so I'm not going to try to act like I have an intelligent opinion on this, but I know I saw some reports that some companies were sharing some of that stuff, with insurance companies to more intelligently price, that stuff for, coverage. I'm not sure. I think that was something that they got caught on and might not. I don't know if it's legal or not, or I have no clue about any of that stuff, but, I think the data collection is mostly just for marketing, at least for right now. And I see we got a weird glare here. I don't know if you guys are seeing that. I don't know if that's just my camera or screen or what, but I don't think it's my lighting. I don't know why I don't know if I just noticed that or if it's been there for a while, but I don't think there's anything on my camera here. Let me see if I can do a quick wipe. That fix it? Maybe I actually did. Anyway, they see as for transmissions being more complex, it's on the processor side. Transtech is known, say the 10R80 is mind-numbingly simple inside, but it's not sequential, so it's processors that make it work. Gotcha. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And Luke says, Matt's neighbors, who is that guy across the street talking to every Sunday? Right. Yeah, people wondering why I'm talking to myself for 2 hours every night. Let me see. And a different car in the driveway every week. Yeah, that was definitely confusing for a while for a lot of people, where they were thinking that I was oh great, the new owners of this house are gonna rent it out to Airbnbers every week or something. People are very, very confused, and then now most people know, because we go to all the community things and stuff, and so everyone has had over the past few years of us living here plenty of opportunities to be like, so what's up with the cars, and figure out what I do. So most people in the neighborhood are now privy to it. Now it's just like a fun car show that comes to them every week, where they get to just check out everything, see what I have, and every once in a while weigh in on their own thoughts on it as well. So it's fun. Let me see. Power Toy says, fellow Pittsburgher in the house. It's awesome. I hope you're doing well. I heard the game was stressful today. I did not watch, but hope you're doing okay after that roller coaster ride that is being a Steelers fan in general. But Good Stick says, we could see bare bones stuff, or bare bones shit boxes when the car market shrinks, when expensive overpriced cars would not be viable anymore. Yeah, we'll see how much it does shrink and what happens. The next 4 years will be very interesting, and we will see how that plays out, for a variety of economic things, and whether that helps or hurts the market. Time will tell. Good Stick says, with American cities being so car-centric, do you think it's time for cities to be more for pedestrians? As a result, we could see smaller and smaller cars on the market. Yeah, well, as far as the pedestrian thing, I think, this has been a pipe dream of city planners for a long time, of, finally figuring out mass transit in a good way, doing the pedestrian thing. I think, this is just a key differentiation between European cities and elsewhere in the world versus American cities, where Americans are a little bit more independent in general. They're a little less willing to bunch up on a bus with other people, stereotypically, and just all those things. I think there's a lot of reasons why that hasn't caught on as much. Some cities, it's worked better than others, and you have cities that do have pretty good mass transit systems with subway systems and all that. But then there's others where there's zero interest in that. And so, I mean, we see some steps, obviously, Times Square being shut down to cars, when was that, 10 years ago or something now, and other stuff. I think like Burlington, Vermont is another example of, as not really a big city, but, an area where they shut down, any kind of traffic to cars, and it's all now just pedestrian for certain areas there. And it's really cool. We were just in Burlington back in 2019. It was really nice to just be able to meander around and not have to worry about, traffic and stuff. But yeah, I think it's just something that I don't think there's an appetite from American consumers in general. And so I think that's something that you're going to see American cities continue to be different, just because of the culture. And Jay says, really glad you made that ILX review. That's now my third car bought and advised from you. That's awesome. I'm so happy the videos help you out, Jay. He says, thank you so much for all you do for us. All the hard work over the years does not go unrecognized. Thank you. I really appreciate that. That's why I do what I do. And so whenever that, resonates and really helps people, that is, yeah, that's the best compliment I can receive. So thank you so much for that, Jay. And yeah, hope the ILX is great for you. And Immutable Dude says, here in Ontario, Canada, politicians are talking about ripping out bike lanes to make room for cars. Doubt we will see small Euro cars anytime soon. Sad though, I would love to be able to buy them. Yeah, same. It's also really tough to justify smaller cars whenever, again, the culture is clearly showing that everyone just wants an F-150. Again, stereotypically speaking, but you look at the sales numbers and you look at, if it's not an F-150, it's other trucks or it's other larger vehicles. Again, I think that some people are being forced to go away from that just from a pricing standpoint, because just trucks are so expensive and any of these large SUVs are getting so expensive as well. But aside from the money thing, I think everyone wants big vehicles, generally speaking, again. But I think, there is a resilient amount of people that still buy sedans. And I think a lot of people thought that market was going to, wither away. And we're seeing that there's resilience and I think some slight growth this past year in the sedan market, which is really encouraging to see that not everyone is, drooling over every single SUV that, is on the road. So that's good. But yeah, I mean, especially if Canada is, thinking about ripping out bike lanes in Ontario, then yeah, there's no way that any of these cities in America are going to go for it, I don't think. So, again, I love small cars. I mean, when I was in Italy back in April, it was so fun being like, wow, like you could actually live like this where everyone has small little fun hatchbacks and and people get by just fine. Everyone enjoys, their drive still. People still can transport everything they need to transport. And life is just fine. It just really makes you question, are these, giant vehicles necessary? Again, it comes down to your lifestyle and needs and all that. But it's kind of fun. It's one of the fun things about traveling outside of the familiar places you're used to, is seeing that other people can live in different ways. And it doesn't mean that one way is better or worse than the other. And Jay says, I hope the value I got was good. It was 20 grand after trade-in, originally 25K before trade-in, and had 37,000 miles. Yeah, I haven't looked at values recently to give you a good estimate on that, Jay, but Kelly Blue Book's what I always use for that, and hope it's at least at that level for sure. Speed Hunter says, what are your thoughts on the 2025 Escape ST line? Escape these days is just kind of dated. It's fine if you get a good deal on it, but Escape is a hard one for me to recommend over the variety of other myriad of choices that you have out there in that segment. So it really comes down to price. If it is going to be cheaper, MSRP wise, it isn't really much of a deal. But if Ford dealers are more desperate than the Toyota and the Honda dealers, then I think there could be a case made for it if the price is right. I just don't love for these new ones. They got rid of the climate controls. It's all in the screen, and the screen can be a little laggy sometimes. It's not the end of the world, but if you're someone who likes that simplicity of climate control buttons, that's just one of the things the Escape kind of went a little further than all the competitors on, for better or for worse. And Jay also says, unfortunate part, they dinged me for no updated maintenance record for Carfax, but it's a sports car. And I said, I trust myself in a sports car, not a 16 to 18 line tech and joyriding it. Gotcha. So yeah, doing your own maintenance. I mean, that's strange, because usually if you have your receipts and you have your oil change records and all that that you did yourself, like, typically that should be enough. Maybe that would be more of a perk if you're selling private party or something. But I mean, you could give those records to the dealer, and the dealer could still say, here's the guy's receipts for all his oil changes, put it in a book or whatever. And, hopefully that would be, and I know as me as a buyer, like if I saw the Carfax was like, oh, it doesn't look like they did oil changes on a regular basis, but then they're like, nope, here's the receipts. They did it. Like, I would have no problems with that personally. So I don't know if that was just like a tool they used to try and beat you up on the trade-in value there, Jay, or not. But that's a little unfortunate that they try to ding you on that. It says same with how they expect you to buy a sports car and no test drives. In my opinion, they don't trust customers either. Right? Absolutely. Yeah. It's I mean, they have some reason to not trust customers because I mean, there are a lot of people that ruined it for everybody with joyriders. But yeah, it's tough though. Yeah, because who wants to buy a car without test driving it first? It's not an ideal situation usually. But let me see. Honda Man says, do you think Mitsubishi is going to now be partly owned by Nissan? I mean, they already kind of are. They're kind of partnered up already, but we'll see. Oh, gotcha. Where are they going now being partly owned by Nissan? Well, so I don't think Nissan, they only had a majority, or they had like a small stake in Mitsubishi and they just sold some of that off. I don't know where that stake is going. Yeah, I talked about that, in the weekly update 2 weeks ago, I think. I don't know who's buying that. And I don't know. It sounded like they're counting on that cash at Nissan. So I'm assuming they have a buyer lined up. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so confident about that, I don't think. But hopefully it goes to someone who can, have it help them and also help Mitsubishi at the same time. We'll see. Good Six says it's unacceptable that Mercedes invented the car, yet their quality is terrible. Tesla is a new company, so it's more excusable. Yeah, I mean, I think it's just, again, Mercedes is again just struggling with just all these big changes we've seen in the car industry from a tech standpoint, from powertrain standpoints, just everything. But again, I think like they could tweak the throttle tuning. It's not that hard, and I just don't know why they're being obtuse with some of that stuff. But Jay says, now they're selling my Type R for the price I told them I wanted with the Carfax they use as an excuse. Yeah, well, that's the dealers for you. They're all shysters. And this is why I have zero sympathy when all these dealers finally go away. Obviously, used dealers will be around forever. But as far as new car dealers, they absolutely, I won't say every single one of them, because there are some good ones out there that aren't sleazy, but majority of dealers completely deserve going out of business, in my opinion. Absolutely. I will have zero sympathy as all of these companies slowly but surely weasel their way out of these franchise agreements and do new brands or new branches or whatever, to be like, oh, we're doing direct to customer, and then get out of these dealers, because it's the worst. It's just terrible, and they did it themselves, so that's why there's zero sympathy for me. Linda says, what type of car brings you the best views? As in muscle cars, family cars, SUV, foreign. Yeah, so typically, on this channel, I mean, it's really the stuff that I built the channel on. So muscle cars always do well. Any of the sporty import stuff usually does well. Those are really the two bread and butter things. Everything else is usually a crapshoot. Most of the time, I never know if a family sedan's going to do well or bad. Excuse me. Same thing for the SUVs. Sometimes I'm surprised, other times I'm not. I will say the one brand that consistently does terrible for me is Kia. Like every single Kia review, like doesn't matter what it is. It could be the EV6 GT with almost 600 horsepower, absolute blast. Nope, no views. Could be the practical hot stuff, hybrid SUVs, whatever. Nope, no one wants to watch. Like it doesn't matter what Kia I do. The Carnival was mediocre, which is better than most for me on this channel, but even that, I was pretty early to review the 2025 Carnival and just very little interest. So I mean, I like Kias personally, but this is another reason why, like I talked about, I think last week, I was invited to the K4 drive, which isn't happening until December. And that car's been out in dealers since August. So that was the main reason why I decided, I'm like, I'm going to be so late to this anyway. I might as well wait another 6 months to get it in the press fleet, because it doesn't even matter. I'm so behind already, as is every other reviewer. Anyone that just goes to the dealer and reviews it is going to have, a review up before I will. But so yeah, but Kia, also there's the fact that I never get views on Kia videos. I was like, strike 1, 2, 3 there with the K4. So I'm excited for it personally. I will review it eventually, but I'm not in a hurry. But yeah, usually trucks don't do well for me. The more expensive vehicles typically don't do well for me. Usually just, affordable, sporty stuff is usually the best best for me. And YHAS says, what is more reliable, Challenger, Scat, Camaro SS, or Mustang GT? These days, they've all kind of had all the kinks worked out of all of them, so I'd say they're all pretty equal in my mind. Yeah, I mean, early on, I know there was a few issues, I think, with the Challengers. I think they got most of that sorted out. And yeah, I think they're all pretty solid. The only thing I will say long term, I believe, I could be wrong, I'm pretty sure Camaro SS, that motor in those is only direct injection, I think. And if that's the case, long term, I'd be worried about that, having that carbon build up, because that's what I loved about the Mustangs is, whenever they did the introduction of direct injection in 2018, they did it as a dual injection of direct and port to clean those valves and make sure that doesn't get gunked up over time. Challenger doesn't have that issue. There was never direct injection at all in that one. So possibly, again, and I could be wrong on that because I can't remember if they changed that in the Camaro or not. But putting that piece aside here, just because of that, I'd say they're all probably equally reliable, but long term, maybe I'd worry about the motor in the Camaro. But other than that, all three should be pretty solid, I think. Immutable Do says, don't buy Mercedes B, C, or CLA. They're maintenance nightmares. I had a B200 starter, was obscured by the subframe. Spark plugs were accessible from underneath the car only. Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, that sounds worse than a Subaru with their spark plugs being like impossible to get to as well in many cases. But yeah. And honestly, the GLA that I had, the 35, that thing was, again, really expensive. Like all the others, the Mercedes, wasn't very nice for the money. And just, again, wasn't super impressive. And again, it had failure points left and right. Like every time you were slowing down under like 5 miles per hour, the backup camera light, or the backup camera, like camera, since it's not just a fixed thing, it's on a little pivot. Every single time that you slow down, that popped out to like scan for potential automated parking spots. And I'm like, you think this little thing going, one, you heard it all the time, especially in the GLA, but two, you think that motor is going to like last, or that little electric thing popping out for a long time? Like, just things that, I mean, you would think would be a bad idea, and maybe it'll be solid and reliable and they did their testing, but it's just like, why do that? No one else is. Like, just, you're overcomplicating things. And B. Mitchell says Mercedes went downhill when they made the engineers figure out how to make the cars more eco-friendly and easier to disassemble at end of life versus boating like tanks for longevity. Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that they really made too much of a change as far as that goes. At the end of the 90s, he says. Interesting. I hadn't heard that component. I just assumed it had, just getting things being more and more advanced, but that certainly can make sense as well. And Chad says the Suzuki Samurai was the first vehicle that I went off-road and ended up with mud in my mouth. Got stuck and had to help my brother out by lifting the back bumper out of the mud. That's awesome. That's really fun. ITM says, been watching you since the EcoBoost Mustang days. Well, thank you for like 10 years of viewership. I really appreciate that. I hope you're still enjoying the channel. Obviously, I guess you're here than you are, hopefully, but thanks so much for the support all this time. It really means a lot. And I see the glare has been there for a while, but it's better now. Well, thanks. Feel free if there's ever any qualities. I think it's even now like a little bit of a smudge there, but hopefully it's good. But if there's ever any quality issues, let me know and I will try and fix that. All right. Yeah. I see it. I'm finally seeing all the glare comments now. Douglas says, hey, Matt, happy Sunday. What's a new car that you're most excited for? This is an unpopular opinion, but my top two cars this year that I was excited about was the Ioniq 5N, which did not disappoint, was fantastic. And then the other one that I actually have been looking forward to driving all year is the Charger EV. And again, I'm probably one of 3 people on planet Earth that's excited about that car at this point. But I mean, it's just, they're doing something new, and they're being bold and creative, and they're not playing it safe. And to me as a reviewer, again, I see, all the usual evolutions and refreshes and ho-hum this and that, and plenty of underwhelming stuff these days. Also a lot of very impressive stuff, but, a lot of companies, just aren't super creative or not wanting to think outside of the box or whatever. And the fact that, Dodge is making this leap to the EV thing, and it's that alone is just, it's a very bold thing to do. And I think, again, seeing that bravery, while some might think it's foolish, it's at least interesting, and it's something that, from a reviewer standpoint, trying to cover new things, like this is a new thing. And also the fact that, again, putting an exhaust on an EV, where they say the decibel level on the outside will be as loud as the old gas Hellcats. Like, no one's doing that. Nobody. And, whether or not that's a terrible idea remains to be seen. Obviously, if you're someone especially that, enjoys the silence of EVs, obviously you can turn it off. And I'm sure there's people that, think that every loud muscle car is a menace to society with, their straight piped exhaust and everything. So maybe this is, not going to be the best for society in some people's opinions, but, they're doing new things. And I'm just excited to try that out. I'm excited to floor it in an EV in here with the windows open, loudness behind me. Like, that's going to be wild and a new experience I've never experienced before. I've driven, at this point, I've reviewed over 700 cars. Never have I experienced that. So to me, those are the types of things that excite me, not just, oh, wow, they gave, this car 10 more horsepower. Let's see how it drives. When I know all along how it's going to drive, it's not going to be any different. This is truly new and exciting. And so I think that's why that's one that I'm most excited for. Looking into next year and stuff, honestly, I'd have to really look at a list of everything, just kind of refresh my memory of exactly what I'm looking forward to coming out in the future here. I'm really excited to try out the Volkswagen ID Buzz. I'll be getting one of those as a press vehicle here in December. And that one's it's fun because, they've just been talking about bringing that thing back for so long here in the States, and to finally see it return, I think it's going to be really fun. And I think that car, it's one of those cars that's going to make everyone else excited on the road as well, and happy. And it's just fun. And I think that's something that, again, is sorely missing from the car world these days, with everything being aggressive and mean and get out of my way. Like, happy, let's try happy. That's a nice new change. Let's try a vehicle that makes you happy, and from a styling standpoint, and not intimidating. And so I think that's what I'm really excited to try out here next month. So those are probably the top ones off the top of my head. I'm sure there's others, but those are the main ones for sure. And Good Stick says, if you want to see truly terrible Mercedes reliability, look at the W220 S-Class. Run for your life. Noted. Noted. And V. Mitchell says, a buddy's wife just got a full tilt loaded 25 Escape with Blue Cruise when on a 2-lane 55 mile per hour road. It saw a country road sign 85 and accelerated to that. Yikes. That is... yeah, that should not be something that it should be able to do. That's also really strange because I thought Blue Cruise was tied to GPS for speed intelligence. That's a weird oversight. Ford would probably be very interested to hear that, because that sounds like a real nice recall waiting to happen there, and a nice juicy lawsuit if that ended up going poorly for someone. That is interesting. Wow, that's crazy. I forgot about the Escape having Blue Cruise, because I don't think the one that I had Blue Cruise when I did the 2023 plug-in hybrid at the end, or at the beginning of this year. Yeah. So I guess maybe I missed that they had Blue Cruise on the Escapes, but that would be a perk for it, because no one else does hands-free stuff in that segment yet. Even Chevy doesn't offer it on Equinox. So you have to go to Equinox EV to get it. So, that could be a perk for Escape for sure. Just watch your speed, apparently. But let me see. Untitled says, never trade it in, sell it instead. If you trade, they'll fudge the numbers around. That's definitely what the dealers love to do. B. Mitchell says, cars, they're more surprised that the POS would go that fast. Yeah. And Untitled says, unless you give them a CarMax certificate or whatever Carvana and others are quoting for, get them to match. Yeah, that is also a good idea. Yeah, to get a quote from the others and just, it doesn't hurt. Honda Man says, if I drive my car to you, would you review it? 2013 Lexus LS 460. That's one of those ones that I personally would like to review, but that's one that probably wouldn't get views. So I wouldn't want to bother you with the road trip unless you are extremely bored or desperately want to see Pittsburgh for whatever reason. I appreciate the offer. And if you are serious and you have a very good excuse for coming here, don't do it just for me, but maybe we could work something out. I've been so packed though with with cars. I have a long list of people still waiting for me to review stuff, even locally. I just haven't gotten around to it. I may do a little bit of that this winter. We'll see how things pick up with press cars or not. But yeah, as of right now, I'm currently scheduling out to February, middle of February already for cars. As far as like stuff I'm reviewing now, in the next couple of weeks is some stuff that you will not be seeing until February. So that's how behind I am with my editing backlog here. So not looking to review anything new aside from just the stuff they're dropping off my driveway every week. But I'd be curious to drive it just for fun. So it must be such a great daily driver to have an LS. I know Linda has an older LS as well. But man, talking about a fantastic daily. You must be living like a king, rolling around in an LS as a daily. And the good stick says, I know a friend who has a Mazda Speed Miata. To change the oil filter, my friend has to take the front right wheel off as this Speed Miata. The Speed engine was crammed so tight into the NB Miata. Interesting. That's wild. That's what you got to do. But I guess that's not the worst in the world to just pull a wheel off. It could be much worse. But Untitled says, interesting. Thanks for the data, Matt. Maybe you'll look out with the Hyundai Ioniq 6N when it comes out. I'm excited for the 6N. I mean, if it's just 5N stuff in the 6 body style, that sounds amazing. Because I actually really like the Ioniq 6. I was so tempted this past summer with these lease deals. They still have them going on. I mean, you can get an Ioniq 6, the regular version, like the base bare bones one, which is still to me fine for like, I think they're releasing for like $219 a month now. It was as low as like, I think $159 at one point. It was like almost a free car. I mean, insurance probably won't be the cheapest because it's an EV, but man, like they are dirt cheap for leases, and it's a lot of car for that money. Especially again, 800 volt charging, with the 350 kilowatt, fast charging and stuff. Like same deal with the Ioniq 5. Their deals on those are fantastic as well. That is, if you want to say what's the best buy right now in the car market, if you're into leasing, it's got to be the Ioniq 5 and Ioniq 6 for $200 or so a month. I mean, it's a couple grand down. I think it's like $3,000 down now or something, 3 or 4. So there is some of that helps to drop that lease payment, but I mean, they are giving those things away almost right now. And it's a really good car for the money. Because like Toyota's offering the same kind of deal for like the BZ4X and the Solterra, but those have way slower charging. I think they're actually better than people give them credit for, but I still think Ioniq 5 and 6 are better than those too. So it's like, it's a really solid little offer for those. But Jordan says, what would it take for Detroit to become a booming car manufacturing city again? EV, hybrid, otherwise, American built in-house. Excuse me. Yeah, I think it's mostly just, I think what it would take to make any of these cities booming manufacturing places, it's really going to come down to just incentives for companies. That's how all these southern states won a lot of these contracts for these new factories, is the fact that they were just willing to throw a huge amount of subsidies at these companies to get them to come to these states. And so there's some of that. I think also it's this tricky thing of, dancing around, the unions, and, some of these companies are unionized, some of them aren't, and some of them are scared of unions coming in, and others, are trying to contemplate, do we want to have a union and all this kind of stuff. So there's some of that as well that, just makes the manufacturing expensive. And this is, I think, the biggest problem, with the Chinese stuff. If that comes in, American companies can't compete. I mean, to me, that's pretty clear cut. Like, they cannot compete because they'll never be able to compete on price, because again, the massive Chinese government subsidized all the development of that, and did it way earlier than, the attempts that we've seen over the past 4 years here, which I think, again, got us to where we are today with, a lot of the impressive products we see from the American companies. But, it just, the Chinese did it faster, and they are always going to have cheaper labor. And cheaper labor means cheaper prices. This is why most of the crap that we buy is made in China, because it's the cheapest. And at the end of the day, the price is all that matters for a lot of people. And you'll never be able to beat them. So that's why, like, I mean, again, I guess this is veering into politics a little bit, but I think that if you want to save American manufacturing, you have to keep the Chinese cars out, because they will never be able to properly compete fairly, unless, again, there is some type of tariff or something that is put on them, but even still, it's just going to be, they still can offer more for the same money. And so it's tough. It's really, that's going to be the biggest thing is I don't see a great way forward if we open things up for, the legacy companies. It'll make better if we open it up short, it means everyone gets cheaper cars that are more impressive, but it's going to come at the expense of, us being dependent on the Chinese for our cars, because all the companies now will just evaporate because they cannot compete on price. So that's, I think that's really going to be the make or break for a lot of these car companies. Sure, there'll be some people that'll be against, a Chinese car, regardless of how cheap it is. And there will be people that just love their name, your brand, and they will buy those till the day they die, regardless. But it's just for the people that price is everything. They're just going to destroy that market if they do come in here, and it's going to be game over. We see this isn't like a theory either. You look at other markets in the world. I can't remember. I talked about this in another live stream recently, but I think one of the South American countries, they came in and just flooded the market with these super cheap Chinese EVs that are really solid vehicles. It sounds like I've never tried them. I'm not saying they're bad from a engineering or quality standpoint, but just they are less expensive and they took over the market. I can't remember the country it was, but I think I read somewhere it's like a 75% market share already for new car sales or something like that. It's a lot. So that's what you'll see in every country that lets them in, I think, because again, no one's going to beat them on price. Nobody. So we'll see how it plays out. But Why Has is like the Family Guy episode where they say the prize is a Kia, and Kia, too bad it's a Kia. Nice. That's funny. I haven't seen that one. I am a Family Guy fan, but I don't think I've watched that one. Yeah, I like Kia, but just too bad that unfortunately general viewership on this channel does not. Let me see. Jesus World says, how much horsepower is the Integra HRC going to have? What do you think about it? If you're talking about the SEMA thing, the yellow one, I think it was, that they showed, that's not going to be a production vehicle. That was just a rolling display of all the accessories they're planning on selling. I know some people were saying, hey, look, it's an Integra Type R, and it made for great clickbait. But they're not doing anything beyond the Type S, I don't think. I could be wrong. But they said in the press release, like, this is to show off all the parts that you can buy. So that's all it's going to be, I think, unless we're talking about something else. I'm not sure. But yeah, there's nothing, I think, hotter than Type S coming as far as I know. See, our RX-8 spark plugs are apparently a pain in the butt, so that's good to know. Good advice here tonight for anyone that's shopping for any of this stuff. Why Has says, from what I've seen, Ford is more reliable than GM, and Dodge and Chrysler are terrible. See, but then every time I post a Ford review, I get a bunch of people come out of the woodwork saying, Ford's junk, blah, blah, blah. So, you get that for every brand pretty much. So it's, I think, again, they all have some areas where they're stronger than others. And I think, it's safe to say that Dodge and Chrysler and all the Stellantis brands seem to have more quality issues from my perception. Could be wrong. And there still, again, are some things that are solid. The Pentastar V6 is, about as bulletproof as they come, I think, these days. So there are some definite highlights there still, even for Stellantis. But, again, like we see, there's some quality issues for sure with a lot of stuff as well. Honda Man says, been here since the BRZ days. I appreciate that as well. That is again, just mind-blowing to think about, and I really appreciate all the years of support. We've all kind of grown up together, and all just, yeah, it's really fun to think about. And thank you so much, Honda Man. Good Six says, if James May took a modern Mercedes in the Botswana Special, we would finish in the Type 1 Beetle. Right. Yeah, I know. It's that's the great thing about those old cars, is they are able to be fixed without a computer. It's nice. Jordan says, do you think GM will ditch the EV Hummer? No, I don't think so. I think, again, GM is confident in their EV direction, and I don't think that, they were really chasing volume for Hummer anyway. It was always kind of supposed to be a halo product and something that is, not meant for everyone. It's 100 grand too, so that's going to make it not meant for everyone as well. So no, I don't think they'll ditch it. And that there's no way, unless they do a complete new ground up thing, there is no way to adapt, Hummer EV for a gas platform. It's just very unique with the way they had to design it to accommodate the double stack battery and the packaging of everything. There's just no way to do it. I think it's here for the long haul. We will see if they do more Hummers or if that was just like a fun experiment for a few years. That'll be the big, I think question, because I have heard zero from GM as far as what their thoughts are on Hummer. I don't know if this is the beginning of a whole line. I believe saw a couple of years ago like a teaser of a smaller one, but that seems like it's been quiet ever since. I don't know if that's just because they've been struggling with the production as far as ramping it up, and now they finally seem to have done that. I don't know if that's the reason why we haven't seen any more stuff, or if they are just kind of putting that on the back burner for now, or what. I don't know, but I don't think they'll ditch it. Honda Man says, I just want to meet you, man. You're an OG, one of my favorites. I really appreciate that. Yeah, if you ever in the summer want to come up to a Pittsburgh Cars and Coffee or something like that, let me know. I didn't actually make any of those this year, but hoping to do more in the future. Yeah, there's some things that I go to. Most years I go to SEMA. I haven't been to SEMA this past year. But I do sometimes do some meetups and things like that, whenever I'm doing some of those types of things. I'm not sure where you're at in the country, but yeah, we've talked about this in the past too, and other live streams of doing some type of, meetup kind of subscriber thing. It's always, for me at least, an overwhelming idea to think about, just because it's a lot of planning and it's a lot of work to do that properly. And not just do an impromptu Sonic meet or something. But I mean, even something like that would be fun, even just to kind of try on a smaller scale before we did some kind of big thing. But I'm hoping to do some more stuff in the future. I think like a couple of years ago, Savage Geese was talking about doing some type of big event potentially. And I think that ended up not really happening, but I'd love to do something with them and do something like that. And I think Chicago's a little more centrally located, and coming out there and being able to meet a bunch of people there would be fun too. So we'll see. But yeah, it'd be fun to do that for sure. Hopefully we'll meet someday, Honda Man. And Dr. Farka Melton says, should I let go of my 6-speed F80 and get the new M2? I mean, a lot of that's personal preference. I love the M2 though. I think the M2 is, I haven't driven a lot of the BMW products in this new generation, but M2 is really good, really fun. And I think compared to F80s, it's the F80 is a little smaller still. Like, the thing that threw me off with the M2 is this new version. You sit up pretty high. It almost feels like it's like a competitor to a Mustang or something in a way, because it is a little bigger and all that. So it comes down to, again, what you like. If you like bigger stuff and that seems to fit for you, then great. I think the last gen M2 though was really a gem, and I think even getting a nice certified used one of those would be a great pickup as well. If you want something kind of a little bit in the middle, that could be good. But yeah, it all comes out of personal preference. Do you want those new screens, the new infotainment system that people are mixed bag on? But if you haven't seen my review on the M2, definitely check it out. I did that one last summer, and I really liked it. It is a lot of fun for sure. Hopefully it helps you a little bit. Might not help you very much, but hopefully it helps a little bit. Yeah, Untitled says, yeah, Inox 6 leases are great. Yeah. And YHAS says, no shade, but I would never trust a Chinese car. Yeah, and this is, I think there is certainly a lot of that. And so I think that would be the only saving grace of these car companies. Yeah, I see Untitled says, yeah, Ford CEO seemed like, yeah, Jim Farley said he doesn't want to give up his, I think he has the Xomi, or I don't even know how to say the brand properly, unfortunately. But yeah, he seems to love that thing. And, again, with these things being so cheap, it's a very controversial thing though. I even saw, I think Shmi 150 just showed up. He got a BYD Seal, and he's getting, I looked at the comments. It seems like there was a decent amount of people that weren't excited about that in the comments. So, that is going to be a problem for sure. And that would, again, keep some sales with some of these other brands. But I think, look at how people were against Hyundais and Kias, and now they do great numbers. And there's still people these days even the same Hyundais and Kias. Oh, I'd never buy, one of those things. They're crap because they remember the ones from the 90s. But a lot of people, they change the perception pretty quickly, and they adopt these things. Even if they thought maybe they would have never bought something like this, 5 or 10 years ago, now they are. I mean, it's this has been a thing we've seen in history many times in the past. I mean, look at Volkswagens. You would think it'd be unimaginable that people, no one in the 40s would have really wanted one because of coming straight out of the war and stuff. But then as you go into the 50s, especially late 50s into the 60s, people weren't angry at Germans and German cars and stuff, and were buying them up like crazy. So I think it's one of those things that even that would only keep the American and other legacy automakers around for so long before a lot of those preconceptions melt away probably quickly as well for many people. And then again, it's like, well, it's cheaper and it gives me more, I'm buying it. And so I think I just really don't see a great future for any legacy car company if things go. I mean, again, Americans are still, a lot of us are hanging on to gas cars and stuff. So there's going to be some of that resistance, but anyone who's open to EVs or anything cheap, that's where, again, they're going to destroy the market if that happens. Again, it could be a win for consumers, but you're going to lose some stuff as a result as well, I think, with the companies going away. And let me see. Truck and Car Guy, thanks for stopping by. Says, greetings all. Sorry for the late entrance. All good. Just happy to see you here. Hope you're doing well, Truck and Car Guy. Linda says, thanks for mentioning my 2004 Lexus. The interior and exterior look new. It's amazing. And now at 20 years old, we no longer have to pay taxes. I want to take it to car shows. My husband laughs at me. I think you would actually have some people that would be excited at car shows. Absolutely. Especially if you're going to, again, like a Cars and Coffee, if you're going to your local hot rod meetup, obviously probably, won't get as good of a reception there, but the car shows where people are really starting to enjoy that kind of stuff. I think that would be absolutely something worth showing off, especially if it's in great shape. That's true. Why says, do you think Toyota's cutting corners these days to stay competitive, or are they generally still the most reliable? In my opinion, they are still the most reliable, I'd say. I don't think they're really cutting corners. Again, I think they are another one that is struggling a little bit with, people want this new technology. People want this, this new engine tech, or this new engine tech is what the rest of the industry is doing, so we should do it as well. And just them kind of struggling with, again, being slightly out of their comfort zone a little bit, with going for forced induction stuff. We'll see how long this lasts. I think, as we are hearing and seeing about how there's going to be more and more plug-in hybrids from Toyota, and more of these like basically EVs with range extender gas engines, and kind of flipping the formula for plug-in hybrids from having tiny battery, big-ish engine, to smaller engine, bigger battery. And we see that swap. I think they will probably try and go back to naturally aspirated stuff for those and keep that around, because I think they know that is probably the best way. That's what they do best, is naturally aspirated stuff in the past. I mean, not that they can't make good turbo motors. I think their turbo motors are really well done. Time will tell, though. No one's been really driving them for the past 10 years, so we don't know, long term. But hopefully, it's very solid, and they have, again, the responsibility of knowing that people are buying their stuff for reliability. So they, I think, do more for reliability than others. And this is something I mentioned actually with my Tacoma review. I was hearing the chief engineer, powertrain engineer for Tacoma, talking about how the engine in that truck not only passed the same rigorous testing as every other Toyota engine, which is a very high bar to begin with, but it actually passed their commercial testing requirements, which is even higher still. And so, it's not for the commercial versions, like it's just the commercial level quality that they are putting into the consumer level stuff with Tacoma. Like, that was the kind of engineering they did on that. Now, whether, again, there was screw ups on the production line that, led to some recalls or whatever the case might be, that's different. But to me, the engineering, they put 110% into that. So I think that is something that's going to, be good long term for them. But just one of those things. Again, it's new, it's uncharted territory. It's going to make some people nervous. But I don't think they're cutting corners at all. I think that is something they can't do, because I think, again, their customers expect top-notch stuff from them, and they closely guard that trust that people have, and they are definitely not going to want to slip on reliability with any new technology. So I think that's why, they're going to make sure that they do everything they need to make that safe and solid. Caleb says, saw 2 Hummer EVs tonight, one truck and one SUV shortly after I saw a Cybertruck. Nice. Yeah. We have a Hummer dealer, or what used to be a Hummer dealer, that now sells GMCs. They've had a couple parked outside, and I have been seeing a couple Hummers driving around every once in a while. Strangely, it's more SUVs around here than the trucks, even though the trucks have been out longer. But we actually saw one of our neighbors had people over tonight, and there was a Cybertruck parked there, and it's like, oh, interesting. They know someone who's a Cybertruck owner. That's that is informative, to say the least. But yeah, Cybertrucks are always an interesting sight. And Bruce says, what are some trends in the automotive industry that excite and worry you? Well, I think, again, the trend of trying to get rid of CarPlay worries me. The trend of data, sharing, and just this grabbing of every data piece they can is a little worrying. The subscription stuff is worrying. Again, it doesn't have to be. Again, if it's DLC that's fun and it's, hey, I can unlock new sounds for my car, great, sounds good. But if it's, if they really keep trying to push for the subscription stuff for basic features, I still think that's never going to go over well with people. Maybe it will eventually, I don't know, but I think those are the main trends that worry me. We will see. I will be curious to see, now that we know what we're dealing with for the next 4 years from an emission standpoint, which basically means no emissions regulations at all, pretty much. It seems most likely. We will see. But I'm curious to see how companies change, because that could make me worried about certain companies, if they're too short-sighted. Most companies can't pivot that fast anyway to make adjustments based on a 4-year term of a president. Some companies can certainly, pivot a little bit and, extend production of something, keep a supplier going for a few more years for something, or accelerate another thing, or do whatever. Like we saw like Honda, instead of taking their sweet time with doing EVs at their own pace, they rushed the Prologue and the ZDX to market to have something here, because again, they were living in times where there was tax credits and there was these things. And I think like that is going to hurt them potentially for the next couple of years here until 2026, whenever we have the regular Honda EVs come online, where it's stuff that gives them some criticism from the media and from buyers, being clearly badge engineered stuff. I think there's those types of things. If companies swing too far the other way, that could be concerning as well. Because, like, for example, if Dodge says, woohoo, we can now churn out all the Hellcats we can make, let's try and get that supplier back, let's try and get these motors back into production, and let's try and relive the 2010s. If they try and do that here for the next 4 years, and things don't continue with lax regulations here in the States after that, then Dodge is just in the same situation they're in right now, but except they're now going to be way further behind the competitors, by being like, well, crap, now it's 2028, and now all of a sudden we have to have emissions regulations again. Now what do? We got a bunch of Hellcats we can't sell, so this is why, most companies, I think, that are wise, don't pivot that much based on presidential terms. They're thinking long term. They have to, again, for supply chains and all that stuff. But if we see companies get a little too, a pendulum effect with being like, okay, let's try and swing the other way super aggressively, I think that could hurt them long term. And, so that is, I think, kind of a very fine needle to thread here for the next 4 years of, okay, how do we take advantage of the fact of not having any restrictions anymore? But how do we do this, one, so it doesn't look bad from a PR standpoint, since we've been preaching that we care about the environment for the past, however many years. And then two, how do we do this in a way that doesn't, again, make us vulnerable in the future? And so, I don't think we'll see that many changes. And I know a lot of enthusiasts think it's going to just be like the glory days again. And I don't think that's going to happen. I think most companies will stick with their current plans, but that'll be the biggest thing to watch in this next year is the kind of announcements companies make and what they end up doing. That could be, better or worse depending on how they play it. So that'll be the very interesting thing to look at, I think. And Jordan, thank you so much for being a member for 13 months now. I really appreciate that. And I see we are also over time too. So we will answer this and the other questions here, and then we will head on out for the night. But Jordan says, would a city Greyhound school bus partnership with Tesla, Rivian, Uber, Mercedes, Toyota, or even Yamaha EV hybrid be beneficial for the U.S. citizen? Well, we are seeing a lot of school buses that are going electric. Again, I guess that is now up for, up in the air, but there is massive demand. I mean, I think Bluebird Buses was saying they can't build the electric buses fast enough. That is red hot. Everyone wants them. Not only just because of subsidies, but I think, again, like a lot of school districts, just like, this looks very good. And there's a lot of perks to that, and it works very well in that kind of a use case, for those, short, little things. And so, I think that there's some of those things where it will be beneficial. Obviously, especially in cities, like cities like LA for sure, where there's tons of smog. You can get, the city buses I think a lot of them already run on natural gas, and maybe in California, some already are electric. Certainly though, like electrifying all that stuff absolutely would benefit the breathing health of everyone in LA, I think. So there's some of those for sure that, could be a nice improvement. And I think we are already seeing that. Again, we will see how things go the rest of the 2020s here, but I think that is something that, a lot of, especially cities, definitely want and will continue to do, regardless of whether or not they get a little subsidy on it or not. But it's, I think it definitely could be beneficial for sure. And let me see, last few questions here. Untitled says Toyota is one of the few still using port injection. For that reason, I'd say they're still reliable, unlike Honda. Yeah, I had concerns about Honda doing direct injection, and I still don't love it. But what I have seen is it seems like some of these high mileage Hondas, the new Hondas, like there's been a couple that have popped up in the past year that are like courier vehicles, very high mileage Ubers and stuff. Like someone had a 2022 Civic Touring with the 1.5T, 250,000 miles on it already, and there was no issues. Like, I looked at the Carfax on it. It was like perfect, like oil change every week or whatever it was with that kind of mileage. But they were flawless. It was totally good. And I mean, most cars, if you maintain them, are going to be fine. But I was, curious, just straight up mileage usually is what gunks up those motors. It's not a time thing, it's mileage. And so the fact that that motor was fine after that kind of a mileage makes me think that, Honda did a good job with the direct injection to make sure it doesn't gunk up the valves and all that. And they're not the only ones. Mazda as well. I actually talked with Mazda's chief engineer about this whenever I sat down with him, whenever we were doing the review of the CX-90 on the launch of that in San Francisco. That was one of my first questions. I was like, hey, I see this new motor, this inline six is direct injection only. Why did you think about doing a port direct combo? What was the thinking there? And I said, the valve issues, that you see in other brands. He's like, we've been doing direct injection in the Mazda 3 for a long time already. And he's like, they're really reliable. No one has that issue in a Mazda. And he's like, go to a parking lot, see how much soot is around the exhaust tip on a Mazda 3 with direct injection. Look how much soot is around the exhaust tip of any Volkswagen Golf or anything else that's direct injection from the other brands. He's like, I think that we have really nailed how we do direct injection, so I don't have any concerns about long-term longevity because we have really done a very good job of designing that so it doesn't, have that kind of an issue. And I 100%, I was like, yeah, I forgot about the Mazda 3s and how they, only have been direct injection for a while now. I think the Sky Active thing came in 2013 for those, and they're very reliable. So Mazda and Honda, I think, show that you can do this in a reliable way. You don't have to be terrified of direct injection. I still don't love it, and it still is not the first choice, in my opinion, unless we're talking about a Honda or a Mazda, in which case time has shown and proven that it is reliable the way they do it. It is fine. You don't have to do the walnut blasting or whatever like you had to do with some of the other stuff in the past. And so I think that there's, some hope there, and so that's why I'm actually confident for long-term Honda reliability still. Um, and I see Dr. Fark there says, seeing a few Hummer EVs out here in Chicago, kind of like them. I actually kind of do as well. I don't love how heavy they are because in the wrong hands, they can be very, very not great for anyone else on the road. But yeah, other than that, I mean, the same thing can be said for Cybertrucks or any of these other massively heavy EVs, or even just all the, heavy duty trucks on the road in general are all, super heavy, and physics is not on your side with any of them, if you're in something that is less than whatever those things weigh, so not great, but I think they're really cool otherwise. Good Stick says, went to my local auto show yesterday. I sat in a Cybertruck. First thing I have noticed is how small the steering wheel is. I could barely get into it as I'm a little too short for it. Interesting. That's nice that the owner was letting people sit in it, but extremely strange truck, he says. Yeah, I haven't even sat in one, but I'm not, a lot of people ask for a review on one. That is one car that I would really struggle to be unbiased with. Every single car I've ever reviewed, I've been very unbiased. I've been open-minded. The Cybertruck is just a hard one for me. Just not into it for a lot of different reasons. And so it just adds up to just a giant conglomeration of just negative vibes for me, unfortunately. And Dr. Fark also says the new M2 is really the only enticing platform that BMW has to offer now. For me, can't get over the G80 styling. Yeah, I'm with you there. It's not ideal in my opinion either. Still, just especially unless black is okay on those because it kind of hides the grille. But other than that, yeah, not into it. And let me see. Bernissa says, was always curious why I've never seen a review of a G8 or a Trans Am. One of the last great Pontiacs made. Your GTO review was great. Well, thank you. I would love to review those. I just have never had an opportunity to review either of those. No one has ever offered them to me. And that's for those types of vehicles. It all comes down to someone offering one. I have had a couple of people with Trans Ams, but they've been in like the middle of the country, and it's hard for me to, make road trips, especially these days. So that's the reason why I've never had anyone local offer those vehicles or, ever cross paths with them. So that's the reason why, but I would love to review both of those someday, for sure. And Carr says, for a meetup, it'd be really cool if once per quarter a certain number of members were randomly selected to meet with you on a Zoom/Discord video chat. That would be a cool incentive for members. That would be cool. That's a really good idea, actually, Cars. I appreciate you offering that up. Yeah, that's something I could probably look into. I'd have to see. I know I don't have like a premium Zoom thing, so I think you're limited to, I think it's 30 minutes. That probably wouldn't be enough time if it was, even if it was just like a handful of people. I'm sure the conversation would go longer than that. But that is a really cool incentive. Maybe that would be something to explore, either as like a regular member perk, or maybe doing that like is more of like a limited thing there with actual interaction of everyone else being on video as well. Maybe do that as like a higher tier or something, just so that it's, really limited to the people that want that the most versus people who, might be more casual or just a gifted membership, maybe don't care that much, versus, and then that would kind of, help me to figure out exactly who wants that and, try and do it that way. But that's a really good idea. I'm going to think about that one some more. I'm curious if anyone else has any thoughts on that too. I'm always interested in hearing what you guys think, but thanks. That's a great idea. Thank you so much, Cars. And Good Stick says, Toyota in the 70s also got a lot of crap by the American car companies as they actually were high quality and offered good gas mileage. True. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess, this is a good point. This stuff has been done in the past, talking about the Chinese companies and stuff. And, we had, again, that really hurt the American companies whenever there was the new competitors. Yeah, they're in the 70s and especially into the 80s and the 90s, really cut into their sales. So, I just don't know how much more they can cut into that stuff before, like Toyota would probably be okay and a few others, but a lot of these other companies that aren't doing super well, I think they'll really go by the wayside. But I guess that's free market. And so, again, we'll see. But let me see, last few questions here. Trent Carga says, I believe I've figured out the issue preventing the Magnum from starting. Just have to take apart part of the dash to confirm. It sounds like a laborious task, potentially. Hopefully it's not too hard to do, but kudos to you for potentially figuring it out. Best of luck with fixing it. Hopefully it gets all resolved here soon. 2-Track Jax's, I believe International has an EV school bus in the works if it's not already available. That's cool. Yeah. I see Good Stick's signing off here. Thanks for stopping by, Good Stick. Untitled says, speaking of worrying, cars selling your data to data brokers who sell to insurance companies is worrying. Absolutely. Definitely. Because then, they start raising your rates just because they know more about you than they should. And Dr. Fark says, I work at State Farm's corporate headquarters. It should absolutely concern you. Also, the push for live telemetry, tracking, and cameras in new cars should concern all of us. Funny you mentioned State Farm. I actually, State Farm is my insurance company, and I have the Drive Safe and Save app, which is, I volunteered to have a little like GPS thing in the car to, monitor the vehicle, just because for us, we don't drive very much. And so it's a massive savings for us because they finally are like knowing beyond just like the regular, like, oh, here's our mileage every year. Like, what that's more, at least the way it's been presented to me, it definitely is a cheaper price to not, because they know we only drive maybe 6,000 miles a year at this point. So it saves us a good bit of money. And the Bullet, I was saving a ton of money when I had it in that, because they're like, you drive this thing 1,000 miles a year, it's basically free to insure, so it was actually nice for me. I know for the average person that drives the average amount of driving every year, probably has more concern there, but for us it actually is a perk that I'm happy they offer, honestly. But yeah, and I see everyone else saying good night here. And Hyper Shadow says, I tagged you on Facebook an hour ago, Matt. Thank you. Appreciate the post. I'll check it out. Thanks so much for sending that. And Fabian says, what's the best car you've ever driven? That's tough to say. I mean, there's been a lot of good stuff over the years. Recent memory, one of the best ones I've driven was the Corvette C06 last year. That thing was amazing. Ioniq 5N is one of the most fun cars I've driven in a while. But there's lots of other really, really good stuff. It all comes down to the price point and all that. But some of the exotic stuff is some of the things I look back on most fondly. I love the LC 500s from Lexus. Ferrari 458 Spider, drove that. That was one of my most fun cars. But best is a very subjective thing. So best to me might not be best to everyone else, but those are some of the top ones I really love, for sure. Linda says, from what I remember, Joe Rady was positive on the Cybertruck. I'm glad he liked it. Yeah. I mean, again, everyone has different takes. That's what's great about the car review world. Everyone weighing in and giving their own 2 cents. B. Mitchell says, I was there in the late 70s and Toyotas weren't all that great, but they learned from their mistakes. Yeah. And that's same with the Koreans. And now we have the fantastic cars we do. But let me see. Jordan, last comment here says, keep the lives and weekly updates. We are on the verge of AI car creations. Keep my AI car question in your shorts. Yeah, I'm going to try and do more shorts here in the future and try and, keep growing that a little bit, because it does seem like it's definitely something that I need to keep trying. I just need to do it in a way that's more time effective, and so I'm going to try and automate that potentially here in the future a little bit. But anyway, yeah, thank you all so much for stopping by here in the live tonight. Hope you enjoyed the live stream here, and have a great week, everyone, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.